The action begins in a gloomy dungeon. The main character comes to her senses and tries to figure out where she is. She feels something on her wrists. The girl looks down and is horrified to discover that her hands are tightly bound together with iron bracelets. The main character begins to shake when she realizes what kind of chains they are. She tries to free herself, but it's useless. Terrified, she presses herself against the wall and begins to analyze everything that is happening to her. The chains on her arms and neck give her a terrible thought. The young maiden realizes that she has become a prisoner of war after being defeated by the formidable barbarians. Some time ago, when the year 1942 reigned on Earth according to the dragon calendar, two peoples came together in terrible battles. These battles are taking place in the East, the land of the barbarians. It is difficult to make out which nation each of them belongs to in the midst of the fighting. One of the soldiers shouts to his leader that the barbarians have launched a fierce counterattack. He reports that the volunteers were defeated and the extreme left vanguard unit fell. The leader of the soldiers, a young girl, shouts at him not to give up his position. She reminds her subordinate that they are all knights of Ildren. She rushes to the attack, commanding the warriors to separate the right central units into a V shape, while the rest cover the left wing. The warrior orders a tactical retreat, fighting off the barbarians. The main character realizes that even if the remaining soldiers survive, they've already lost too many of their fighters. The girl holds the position of the first knight commander of the expeditionary force of the eastern lands belonging to the kingdom of Ildren. Her name is Serafina de Lavillant. She screams that they must not fall on the battlefield because they have been marching towards this goal for 7 years. The main character urges everyone to retreat, as they must bring home as many soldiers as possible. At that moment, a soldier who is overthrown by the enemy falls next to her. A huge foot steps onto the ground, shaking it. A menacing voice asks the heroine if she is a crystal silk. A barbarian of monstrous size raises his saber over her, saying that he is bored with her soldiers. He offers the main character to fight him once for once. The girl swallows nervously, realizing that the battle-hardened warrior showed up at the last moment. Serafina knows that the soldiers will not be able to retreat when such a monster is in their way. She decides that she must defeat him so that the warriors can retreat. She calls her assistant and says that they will not be able to defeat this enemy in numbers. The girl takes him on herself, leaving the rest of the knights to him. She rushes into battle, shouting at the assistant to tell her older brother that she gave her life for Ilden. Everyone is screaming furiously. There is panic and confusion everywhere. Meanwhile, Serafina spins in the air to attack. She lands, striking her opponent with a sword. The attack is not very effective. The barbarian grins and mockingly says that he is impressed by how she was able to stand up to him. The main character is angry that the fight is happening as if through one gate. What a monster, she thinks with annoyance. Serafina looks up at him and screams at him not to delay and finish her off. The barbarian looks at her, baring his teeth, and says he refuses because the girl will become his trophy. He asks her not to worry about her life because her body will bring a lot of benefits. The warrior understands perfectly well what he is talking about, so a chill runs through her body. After some time, when she comes to her senses and sits in the dungeon, she remembers that the barbarians caught her as a trophy. She wonders if they will treat her like a serf and force her to work with cattle. No, they'll probably beat the information out of her. They even let her stay alive for some reason, the girl thinks, looking at the bars of the dungeon. Serafina remembers that they grabbed her, knowing that she was a girl. It can only mean one thing. She assumes that in this case they will make her their toy, enjoying her youth and defenselessness. The heroine does not find a place for herself from these thoughts, realizing what a humiliation it would be for an unmarried noblewoman. These lands are simply teeming with monsters. The girl dejectedly drops her head on her chest. Suddenly, another equally terrifying thought comes to her. It's okay if they humiliate only her, but she will become a disgrace to her family. She was defeated as the commander of the Eastern Punitive Detachment. She remembers in horror that she had soldiers who swore allegiance to her. What happened to them? All the fronts could have retreated in the time she had gained them. The rear guard would have had time to leave, but the vanguard... The girl realizes that they were most likely imprisoned or even thrown down. She hits the wall in a rage. The warrior is worried that she has not fulfilled her duties as a noblewoman. She didn't protect people. If they lose, if they can't capture the fertile lands of the East, then people will starve in the wastelands. Someone, who has been eavesdropping on her conversation with herself all this time, says that the girl is right and admirable. She turns around and asks who is here. A dark-haired girl approaches the main character and tells her name. Her name is Cecilia. She says she works for the man who caught Serafina. She sighs sadly and, looking at the girl from under her brows, says that she realized that Cecilia's goal was to get information out of her. A new acquaintance looks at the prisoner with incomprehension and asks what Serafina is talking about. The main character flares up and screams so that the girl does not look incomprehensible. She calls Cecilia a barbarian. She points to the tools in the girl's hands and decides that they are needed in order to extract information from her until she surrenders her own. The girl looks away. She bends down and says that she doesn't have such tools. She asks the surprised heroine what she's talking about. Serafina, seeing how the maid prepares the chains, decides that her fate is already sealed and everything else is just nonsense. The girl turns to the prisoner and says that she was sent here for only one purpose. She checks the chain for strength and says that she only has to make a trophy girl that matches the tastes of the owner. The main character is confused. At this time, the maid pulls the chain attached to the wall like a lever. With a screech, it stretches, and Serafina de Lavillant unexpectedly flies into the air. This event is not accompanied by the most pleasant feelings. The girl turns to Cecilia and asks what she is doing. She calmly replies that it will be difficult for her to work if the main character interferes with her in this. The noblewoman thinks that what she suspected is already beginning. She's going to have a hard time with those chains. The girl firmly decides that she will never give up, no matter how hard it is for her to endure this interrogation. Meanwhile, the barbarian sitting on the hill, the one who captured the main character, wants to visit his trophy. The girl comes to her senses when she hears water dripping onto the floor of the dungeon. It turns out that she is standing without clothes. Serafina shudders from the cold and coughs. The girl can't figure out what's happening to her. Cecilia wrings out a piece of cloth and wipes the heroine's body with it, saying that she has washed most of the dirt. She is indignant. The maid explains that she is wiping her ward of dirt. The heroine was taken aback by this turn of events. Cecilia admits that she expected to see a more wounded girl, but she turned out to be surprisingly good. She admitted that the main character's body is very feminine, which greatly confused and surprised the warrior. Serafina says that she is a knight and there is not a drop of femininity in her. The maid replies that it doesn't matter. The most important thing is how she looks in the eyes of the owner. The heroine asks fearfully what she is talking about. The girl was surprised that Serafina didn't know anything yet. Examining one of the instruments, she replies that nothing can be done about it, and the main character will no longer leave these lands. The warrior looks at her with her eyes wide open. She asks why Cecilia needs this tool. She replies that it doesn't matter and suggests ending it. The main character decides that what she was so afraid of has begun. The girl starts kicking and struggling. With a quick movement of her hand, the maid unlocks the heroine's hands, puts them in order, and forces her to get dressed. Serafina remains standing in complete disbelief. The girl opens one of her eyes slightly. She examines herself, realizing that something different awaits her than what she was preparing for. The girl feels the scent of perfume and tries to understand what she is being prepared for. Cecilia says she did her job perfectly. The heroine assumes that such an outfit is common for prisoners here, but quickly dismisses this version. There is a crash, and the whole dungeon shudders. The girl asks Cecilia what kind of thunderstorm is upstairs. The maid replies that it is not a thunderstorm, but the master. The heroine remembers their last meeting and looks behind bars. A silhouette appears behind her. The man opens the door with a creak and enters the damp dungeon. He says he hardly recognizes the crystal shell. The barbarian introduces himself, saying that his name is Val Thunder Roar. He is the heir of General Erden, one-eyed. The heroine decides that Val is even more intimidating up close. She looks at his golden eyes and realizes that he is not human. She says she understood what he was up to. The story that Serafina's grandfather told turned out to be not a fairy tale, but a reality. Barbarians attacked and abducted girls from the Eastern Expedition Group. They used them in rituals. The girl cried out that her name was Serafina de Lavillant. She is the first knight of the Eastern Expedition Army and the youngest daughter of Margrave Mateus of the Kingdom of Ildren. She won't beg for mercy no matter what. Val looks at the brave girl in surprise. Silence reigns in the dungeon. The main character decides that she doesn't care what happens to her. The main thing is to show your pride. The man smiles and says that Serafina has a very beautiful name. He shortens it to Sulfur. The barbarian says he has not heard of this story and the girl is here to become his wife. The heroine is very surprised. She asks again who should become whose wife. Hearing the answer again, the girl screams that this is ridiculous. She believes that the barbarian is trying to lower her guard in order to carry out his insidious plan. He replies that he could have done it while she was sleeping. Serafina explains to Val that they are enemies and they cannot marry. He replies that these are the rules of the West. They don't work for them. The tradition of marrying a night girl from the army of the Eastern Expedition has been passed down from generation to generation in his family. The heroine thinks that this is complete madness. She says that such a strange reason won't change her mind. The man is surprised. He says that she said herself that he can dispose of her as he sees fit. Or was it just a chat, he asks. The girl is angry that she blurted it out on emotion. Val calms her down, saying that he will not force her to do anything. Once he fought with her, he realized that she was his betrothed. The heroine looks at him with her eyes wide open. One fight told him more than 1,000 words. Love from the first fight sums up the barbarian with a smile. Serafina is still in turmoil. Val again convinces her that he will not force her and, turning around, leaves. The girl shouts after him to stop. She trembles and asks what it was just now. The maid replies that the master has offered to marry him. In the morning, after a sudden proposal, the main character dreamed of her grandfather. In the dream, he apologized to her. He said that he had taught her a lot, but the girl's innate talents were simply incredible. She would have been happier if she had been born a man or someone other than a knight. The soldiers discussed the heroine among themselves, indignant that a woman had been appointed to the post of commander. They noted her talent and last name. The ladies, dressed in magnificent dresses, whispered to each other, calling Serafina masculine and discussing her personal life. The girl's brother heard what she said to the next groom and asked how long she was going to indulge her desires and play knight in a woman's body. He turned around, telling her to end this circus, since she had already been awarded the title of Lord Commander. Her brother was disappearing from her dreams. A barbarian has taken his place, demanding that Sarah become his wife. The girl wakes up in a cold sweat. The heroine is trying to make sense of this dream, but she was distracted by a sound. Who was lying next to her? She turns around and sees a barbarian next to her without clothes. She notices something else sticking out from under the blanket. Serafina screams all over the house. The man sits down quite calmly. The girl screams at him, "What is he doing here, and even without clothes?" The man doesn't say anything. The heroine glances at the wall. The massive armor of a barbarian is hanging on it. The girl realizes that she is not actually in a cage, but in his bedroom. She attacks the man again. He replies that it's a little early for tantrums. He says that after what happened last night, he can say with confidence that the girl has plenty of strength of mind. She was taken aback. Last night? The heroine doesn't even want to remember what happened there. She says she doesn't remember and doesn't want to know. Serafina reminds us that the barbarian promised not to force her. She asks the surprised Val if he doesn't remember. He laughs and says you shouldn't worry. The girl tearfully shouts that the savage treats a girl's chastity as a trifle. She was prepared to be deceived and devastated. The girl could fight back against the enemy, but she did not expect him to attack her in her sleep. If the barbarian had really abused her, then she wasn't just staying here as a prisoner and shaming her home. Was it really the girl's fate to bear his children and give birth to enemies of her people? Under Val's gaze, she approaches the armor and with trembling hands picks up the sword stuck in the scabbard. Serafina orders the man to kill her here and now. The barbarian slaps her on the top of the head and asks what's wrong with her. He says he would understand if she wanted to kill him, but why would she end her own life? The heroine replied that a man like him would not understand. The girl said that she had already disgraced herself on the battlefield. She won't stoop to attack an unarmed man because she can't lose her pride either. She asks Val to finish her off before she loses her honor. Serafina asks you to do this as soon as possible. The man, holding a sword in his hands, replies that this is a problem for him. The girl gets angry and asks again what it means. He replies that by making love, she will have children. The barbarian says that honor and shame mean nothing to him. The main character screams in a fit of anger. She says that shame and honor mean nothing to people like him. But the heroine can only rely on pride. At that moment, the door to the bedroom opens and a maid enters, warning that Lord Val's clothes are already dry. Serafina had not expected such an abrupt intervention in the conversation. Cecilia says that the girl is very lucky that she woke up without consequences. She gives her master clothes and says that after the capture, the heroine was given sleeping pills, but they overdid it a little. The girl was very ill. The barbarian says that even he was taken aback. The heroine realizes that the dream she saw was actually caused by the effects of sleeping pills. The The girl asks if that's what Val meant when he talked about last night. The man hoped that he could tease the warrior a little more. He apologized that they had given him such a dosage without thinking. Because of this, paralysis was caused. Serafina is scared because she only knew about the sleeping potion. It turns out that this potion can even set bones, and it is very well suited to stop bleeding. The heroine looks at the barbarian in surprise and asks if this means that nothing happened. He replies that nothing but the wrong dosage. He laughs at her, saying that he first asks her to marry him and then almost drives her to her grave. The girl hides her eyes in shame. The heroine raises her head and frantically shouts that he is a liar. She asks why Val was walking around with no clothes on. The warrior demands that he bring her a sword and get what he deserves. The barbarian just laughs. He says that if she's full of energy, then there's nothing to worry about. Apparently, the preparation for breakfast was not in vain, he adds. The girl is surprised and asks what kind of breakfast. The man reminds her that a whole day has passed since the day of the battle, and she still hasn't eaten anything. Breakfast is waiting in the living room. Serafina can join us when she calms down, he finishes. The door closes behind him. The main character says that she already knows about breakfast because her whole stomach is twisted. No food can compare to the relief of knowing that nothing has been done to it. Suddenly, she finds herself feeling relieved. The girl remembers that she is tempering her will. After all, initially, the heroine was preparing for the worst on the battlefield. She never thought that she would be captured. And yet, she doesn't understand what kind of custom it is to marry female knights and strengthen the future generation at their expense. Moreover, she has been devoted to knighthood for 10 years and is extremely surprised that someone wants to marry her, so unfeminine. She finds herself thinking again that she feels somehow wrong. The man is a barbarian, and she is his prisoner, no more, no less. She decides that instead of the aforementioned breakfast, cattle feed will be waiting for her. Apparently, Val is trying to break her down. But the barbarian ran into the wrong one. She's a knight, so she's used to even the most humble food. The girl has the blood of the Lavillant house in her, so she decides to show the man the spirit of a real noblewoman. Val meets her in the living room. He offers her a seat. The heroine looks at the dish and discovers that the whole table is occupied by meat. The kingdom of Ildren, where she comes from, has a desolate terrain and poor land. Their culture develops taking into account the environment, mainly from simple ingredients. Only the military is allowed to eat meat. There is almost no fatty meat here. And the noble, the daughter of the Lavillant family, was no exception. She shuddered before the true value of the huge piece of mysterious meat. She is surprised by the fat content of the meat, because she has never seen such a thing. The girl decides that this is some kind of trap. She decides that they are going to break her in this way. She grins and says that the barbarians are not bright. Had Val decided to break her with something like that? Besides, she didn't even have anywhere to sit. The man replied that he had no idea how much the heroine would be able to eat. He cuts off a piece of meat and asks if a quarter is enough for her. Serafina looks at the piece and can't believe her eyes. The quarter piece in front of the girl is even bigger than her torso. She watches the barbarian suspiciously. "What is it?" he asks, and offers to eat. The heroine stands confused. Suddenly, a thought occurs to her. The girl says she understood, and now she sees right through the scoundrel. Now Val and Cecilia don't understand anything. The heroine mutters that in such pretentious ways they want to break her resolve and tame her like an animal. She adds that if she is mistaken, and in these parts you can serve so much meat without a twinge of conscience, then they live perfectly. She points her finger at her captors and says she'd rather fall asleep forever than accept the barbarian's handouts. The heroine's stomach begins to rumble violently. He's crying louder than the girl herself has ever cried. Her shame is reinforced by this shame. Serafina asks to end it, but Val says to change the subject. He notices that the girl's body speaks for itself. She screams that the truth is in the words. The maidservant looks at her master that she was talking about it. The man says that the stomach is hungry for food, which means that the heroine's body resists death. By rejecting food, she is only lying to herself. He says that the heroine will come to nothing, not to mention the life she had to give up for the food on the table. Barbarians take life for their own survival. The knights make campaigns for the same reason, Val continues. The girl reluctantly agrees. The Lord asks her to stop grumbling and sit down to eat. "It's delicious," he says. Serafina is mesmerized by his smile. "How stubborn," Cecilia says with displeasure. The heroine looks at her with a commanding look and asks the maid what it was just now. She approaches her and says that she will tell her with her permission. As a welcome, the Lord personally decided to go hunting for breakfast for the girl. Cecilia says that he went hunting as soon as he dragged Serafina to the dungeon, hoping that when she woke up, she would taste meat. When the chief's son goes hunting as a courtesy, he tries to express goodwill towards the one he wants to marry. The heroine asks what this has to do with her. The maid replies that she washed the bloodstains from the master's clothes today. She says Val is a man of honor and action. In Serafina's country, he could be considered a prince. Cecilia says that a man of high rank offered the heroine his hospitality. As a noblewoman, she refuses him too rudely. The girl realizes that she has been caught. If the maid knows about her title, then they are well informed. She decides that it's not that serious, and it seems that she has no right to refuse. She touches the meat with her finger and notes its tenderness. The girl cuts off a piece with a knife and puts it in her mouth. Chewing the meat, she feels how delicious it is. The meat is tender and juicy. It has its own peculiarity, but in combination with the smell it creates a stunning piquancy. Even the royal family of Ildren had not seen such food. What a luxury, what a beautiful luxury, the heroine exclaims. Val watches her meal with pleasure. He asks if the cheese tastes good. The girl answers in the affirmative. Quite no complaints, she says, wiping her mouth with her hand. She says she still doesn't agree to become his wife, but she can forgive the incident with the sleeping potion. The man grins. Serafina asks the Lord what kind of meat it is. It looks like chicken, but the texture is like beef. The man invites her to take a look at him. Val explained that the butchering is done in the backyard. He did not recommend watching until the girl had finished eating. If you're interested, you can look out the window, he finished. The warrior immediately turned to the window because she wanted to find out. Maybe her people will be able to breed these animals on their land. A fairly common species in these lands, the man added. They are called dragons. There was indeed a huge dragon carcass lying in the courtyard. The heroine was horrified. She screamed to the whole yard. The man asked why she was shouting again. Serafina asked if she was eating a dragon. Val replied in the affirmative. She couldn't believe it. A dragon from the legends? A calamity from heaven? Val was surprised that they were being talked about like that in the West. The girl began to clarify the facts she knew about dragons. The man replied that their types are different. He asked Sarah to slow down because she was eating too fast. She replied that she should enjoy her meal. The desire to leave my life has disappeared. Serafina looks at Lord Val, who is sitting across from her, and asks if he will let her go outside. He replies that he wants to show her the mountains of these lands. The girl looks at him with disappointment and displeasure. The man does not understand her reaction and asks why she made such a grimace, as if she was about to be eaten by a dragon. She replies that she doesn't believe Varvara. How could he just let her out for a walk? Val asks if she still doesn't trust him. The main character flashes and screams, which of course she does not trust. She's been his prisoner of war for 2 days now. Her indignation also lies in the fact that the man wants to take her to the mountains, where dangerous creatures live. Val looks at her with incomprehension and replies that in his opinion, Western horses with their strange legs seem more dangerous to him. With the change of places, the worldview also changes. For example, views on animals and culture, he sums up. The man asks if the heroine is really afraid after all. The whole house can hear the girl screaming that she is not some kind of coward. She swears at the Lord that he laughs and dishonors the honor of knights and nobles. Serafina asks to be understood correctly and says that she feels as if she is dancing to someone else's tune. The girl did not forgive the barbarian for what he had done. He replies that it's only been 2 days and there's nothing you can do about it. The man smiles gently and says he thinks Serafina de Lavillant will like these lands. The girl snorts and asks why on earth she should like these lands. Val replies that he thinks so. He opens the door with a creak and offers to hit the road. The heroine is angry at him for talking incomprehensibly. She is sure that she will not like the landscape of the barbarian lands. Suddenly, a beautiful view appears before Serafina's eyes. The girl even catches her breath from such beauty. The man turns to her and asks, "What is it?" She replies that everything is fine. The vegetation here is much richer and more lush than the heroine thought. Lord Val grins smugly. He notices that the eastern lands of Serafina's country are wastelands. In the land of the barbarians, it's even more pleasant to breathe. He heads towards the mountains, noticing that the main character can't even move in surprise. The girl gets mad at him, saying that Val is making a fool of her. How dare this barbarian overthrow their kingdom? The warrior does not understand at all what he was going to show her. She decides that she will remain calm so as not to be surprised by either the dragons or the local scenery. A couple accompanied by a maid moves along a mountain path past a river. Serafina looks up at the sky and sees a dragon streaking over her. Although she decided not to be surprised by anything, she admires a real dragon soaring in the sky. It was as if the girl had entered another world. Val turns to her and asks if the heroine liked the dragon. She replies that, even so, is it really possible not to be afraid of these legendary creatures? The Lord replies that dragons live all over his country. It is very difficult to hunt them, but if you do not approach their lair with babies, then they do not touch people. The girl asks if she will really become friends with them after that. Val replies that after living here, she'll get used to it. Didn't Serafina like dragon meat? The man asks. The warrior remembers this divine taste. She looks up at the sky again and says that meat flies through the air. Val replies that she can think of dragons as birds. The main character remembers that it's still a long way to the hill and asks what the man wanted to show her. He keeps walking forward and tells her not to rush so much because they will get there soon. He looks at her over his shoulder and asks her to listen to the sound in the air. Serafina stops, not understanding what else that sound is. Suddenly, she draws attention to a majestic waterfall. The main character can't believe her eyes. This is her first time seeing such an amazing phenomenon. The man asks if she likes it. There's no such thing in the West, is there? He smiles. Serafina de Lavillant begins to resent it again. She doesn't like that the Lord is always mocking her. She recalls the sparse landscapes of her kingdom and agrees that you will not see such beauty there. In fact, Ildren is full of plains and wastelands, she says sadly. Dragons are known there only from legends. The girl admits that there are not only waterfalls in their region, but also the water itself. The winters there are very long, and the barbarians cannot be defeated in any way. The barbarian looks at her with regret and says that he did not want to show off in front of the main character. He just wants to show her these places, nothing more. He decides to tell Serafina about another reason for their stay here. The girl wonders what the reason could be. Val takes off his clothes in one motion and invites the young girl to undress too. The noblewoman is stunned by this turn of events. She squints and asks why on earth she should do that. The Lord replies that the first thing men and women should do in the baths is undress. The main character finds herself in an awkward position again. Val explains that they are going swimming and asks what she was thinking. The girl shouts at him, saying that she already understood everything. She swears because a man speaks ambiguously. She asks why on earth men and women swim together. Serafina thinks it's debauchery. The hero replies that these are the traditions. He notices that it is wrong to establish his own rules on someone else's land. The girl screams that she is not going to obey his barbaric traditions. The man just laughs. A few seconds later, Serafina and Cecilia are sitting on the shore of a waterfall without clothes. The noblewoman asks why the maid does not hesitate to undress in front of the master. She replies that she has already got used to it. Anyway, Val ordered her to stay with the heroine. The man himself went swimming in another place. Sarah asks if he really thought she could escape. Cecilia replies that this is not the case. The owner left her for the sake of the heroine's safety. The noblewoman said it sounded like dangerous creatures lived here. Suddenly, a huge lizard jumps out of the water at her. The girl, terrified, flees from him, waving her arms. The heroine climbs ashore closer to Cecilia and asks what kind of creature it is. The lizard is watching her closely. The reptile quietly sinks into the water. The maid explains that this is Hawaii. They have such creatures. The local wildlife here is calm and does not bite, she says. Serafina notices that it sounded like there were only animals around. The maid says it is. Footsteps are heard, and the girls, looking up, notice how another lizard is slowly moving along the slope of the waterfall. The main character looks at him, trembling all over. She is fascinated and terrified by the size of the reptile. The girl turns to Cecilia and asks how you can swim when there are only animals around. She runs away, ignoring the screams of the maid. Cecilia remains standing, completely confused. Serafina runs some distance away from her and stops near a tree, trying to catch her breath. She realizes that she has unconsciously rushed forward, recklessly leaving her belongings and shoes at the waterfall. Birds are circling above her head. The girl feels uneasy, and in order not to stumble upon a dangerous beast, she decides to return. There's a rustle from behind. Serafina de Lavillant shrinks into a ball and asks in fright who is here. The girl looks around, realizing that she is not alone here. Judging by the voice, there's a young man nearby. What if, instead of that bearded old man, a real brutal barbarian appears? Thoughts flash through her head. The bushes in front of her part and a silhouette of a man appears from them. The heroine asks him not to approach. A young man with a beautiful and toned figure comes out to meet her. He asks what she's doing here. The girl looks at him and admires his beauty. He asks if she's okay. The heroine does not listen to him, but only tries to understand who he is. She finds herself thinking that she finds his appearance even more attractive than the appearance of the knights of their kingdom. Suddenly, the girl comes to her senses and screams. She screams who he is and why he's looking at her. Serafina wonders what she was even thinking about. The girl reminds herself that he is a barbarian. She shouldn't be fooled. Was he targeting her chastity? The man looks at her with incomprehension and asks again. He says he knows that she is a night girl, captured by the heir of the great barbarian chieftain. He says that, apparently, she was swimming and suddenly became afraid of animals. The heroine was taken aback by these words. She asked how he knew about it. The barbarian replies that his mother is also an ex-girlfriend, a knight of the West. He had heard a similar story from her. The heroine looks at him in surprise. The mother also managed to get away from the local animals and nature from the first day of her arrival, the man says. He adds that she's used to everything now, and he should have told her about it earlier. The young man looked to be about 16. The heroine admits that the bearded man also mentioned the tradition of marrying female knights. The girl sneezed loudly. She wipes her nose with her hand and says she's a little cold. The man takes his shirt off his shoulder. "Here you go," he says, throwing clothes on Serafina. The girl is very surprised by such a caring attitude. She asks why he's doing this. The man replies that a young girl shouldn't be cold. Their eyes meet. The young man smiles and promises to escort her to the women's pool, allowing her to warm up under his cape. The heroine really wants to know who this true gentleman is. She'd always thought that barbarians attacked women like animals. Is he really an exception? The man's movements are calm and graceful. To think that the Western Knight's role model ended up in a barbaric land. Maybe the bearded old man who asked her to marry in the first place is the only one among the barbarians, she thinks. The girl wonders if she has miscalculated about them. The young man asks why she trembled and her face changed. He bends down to her and touches her head, asking if she has a cold. This makes her tremble even more. The barbarian's face is too close, and his caring attitude can't help but embarrass a young girl. The heroine does not know how to behave because she has absolutely no experience with the male sex. He asks if everything is all right, saying that it will be difficult for her to get down the mountain. Sarah doesn't know what to do next. The man asks her not to get angry because he is touching her. The barbarian picks up the heroine in his arms and says that she is very light. She's so uncomfortable that the girl can't even resist. The young man looks at her and offers to go. Serafina imagines him in the bearded man's place, wondering what she would say to him in response to the same offer. Meanwhile, the man carries her in his arms towards the bathing area. They are greeted by Cecilia, exclaiming that she has finally found her ward. The maid asks how it happened that Serafina appeared in front of a man without clothes. She addresses him by name, calling the young man Mr. Val. The heroine did not expect such a turn of events. The man looks at her and asks if she really noticed just now. It's sad, because he's her fiancé. The barbarian smiles at her. He notices that as soon as he shaved, she turned into a sweet and innocent little girl. Horrified, the girl begins to recall the awkward moments a couple of minutes ago and shouts that she is the virgin, slapping the young man in the face. He chuckles, saying that his girl has managed to stand up for herself even in such an awkward position. Serafina notices the reddened cheek of the young man and asks if it really doesn't hurt him. He replies that these are just pranks. The girl threatens that if she had a sword at hand, he would definitely be in trouble. And anyway, it was his own fault for dragging her into the animal lair. The man asks what kind of lair he is talking about. Cecilia explains that the heroine was afraid of animals. The girl shouts at both of them, no matter what they tell her about the peculiarities of animals. As she returns, she thinks about how much she has been through today. The heroine said that she would forgive Varvara for today's antics, but he might not hope for a second chance. The man laughs and says that he is content with that. He notes that his fiancée is very generous. The girl replies that she is not his bride at all. The young man asks if she still doesn't want it. The girl screams that he was staring at her too pityingly. She gets angry and admits that it wasn't an easy day. Now she knew that you could look at a lord when he wasn't bearded. Just a little bit. A few days later, before the girl could blink, the man's beard grew back. The main character stands surrounded by barbarians and listens from the debate. They all want to see her. The heroine mentally addresses her deceased relatives. She thinks that maybe this is her last day. Serafina asks the Lord why everyone present looks like they want to kill her. An hour earlier, the girl asks Val if he arranged the meeting, saying that he explained it too vaguely. He says that he has gathered all the elders at the base of their tribe. The man points to a place in the distance. This place is the most densely populated and is called the Lake Village. The heroine is surprised that the settlement, surrounded by greenery and water, looks wonderful. She asks why Val is talking about such a strategically important point. He looks at her and is surprised that the girl is so upset. The heroine suggests that he just imagine that she can run away and tell the Eastern Expedition about this place. The man thinks about it. Serafina continues, saying that the Eastern Expedition will destroy them all. Lord Val looks at her with a slight smile and starts laughing loudly, making the heroine lose her temper. The heroine screams that there is nothing funny, and it was said in all seriousness. She asks if he's looking down on her and thinks that Serafina won't be able to escape. The young man says that there is nothing like that and, covering his beard with his hand, teases Sarah that she has fallen in love with his beautiful face. The girl replies that it is a figment of his imagination. She shouts at the Lord not to change the subject. Val jokes that Sarah has fallen in love with him and shouldn't worry about it. The man said that, as he had mentioned earlier, if she herself did not want to return to Ildren, then there was no need to worry. The girl looks at him with tired eyes. The man reminds her that he is going to make her his bride, and she will definitely fall in love with him. The heroine looks at the young man with indignation. She asks where he gets such confidence from. The maid is surprised by such communication between the bride and groom. Thus, they arrive in Ozernoye. There, barbarians armed to the teeth were waiting for the heroine, eager to learn as much as possible about her. Serafina asks why they surrounded her. She wondered if, unlike the bearded man and his attendant, they wanted revenge. For the captured commander of the Eastern Expedition, reprisals are commonplace. Val calls out to the girl. He tells her to relax, promising that he will explain everything to the barbarians. The man takes a deep breath. He loudly addresses the warriors, thanking them for the warm welcome of Mrs. Crystal Silk. The girl is startled by his scream. He says that strong warriors should be given priority for greetings, as they have come to greet the tribal elders. The barbarians stare at him and then agree with his decision. One of them says that he wants to fight Crystal Shellam as soon as possible. The heroine asks herself where this murderous fool has gone and what is going on. She asks the Lord why they're all here. He says it's for friendly matches. Talking about duels confuses the girl. She doesn't understand what the young man is talking about, asking if they wouldn't take revenge on her. He wonders what the heroine was worried about. The man calls his warriors to attention again. He asks if they hold a grudge against Crystal Silk. He asks everyone who does not seek revenge to stand in a line. A road forms in front of the heroes, between two lines. Barbarian warriors don't hold grudges against a girl. She looks at them in surprise. The man asks what struck her so much. They stand between the ranks to walk along the road. It's easy for Val to say, maybe it just happened because of his status as the heir to the chieftainship, the heroine thinks. She puts aside these thoughts and walks along the paved road, deciding that, as a knight, she must be steadfast. The enemies were attacked on her initiative, so it can't be that their grudges dissipated so quickly. A young man in armor steps out of the crowd. He addresses the main character. She turns around, startled. With tears in his eyes, the warrior says that the heroine fought superbly in the last battle. She looks at him in surprise. During the break, all the barbarians began to praise her talent as a warrior. They note that they will make wonderful kids with a thunderous roar. What are they carrying? The girl screams. She's the commander of the enemy army. Val addresses her, saying that they don't really hold grudges. For barbarians, a strong man is a good man, he explains. Such are the values of the barbarians from Ozernoye. The heroine asks if it's legal. She and the man approach one of the buildings of this settlement. He grins and calls the maid to him. Cecilia approaches her master, ready to run errands. Val says there's a house here with a heated bathtub, so he wants the girls to go for a swim. The maid asks if he has any business. The Lord replies that there is a routine job. He says he has to talk to the elders. The man encourages Serafina and addresses the people in the house. Two pretty girls look out of the door, surprised by the unexpected arrival of their master. Val asks to bathe Serafina and Cecilia, saying that the blonde is his fiancée. They are full of congratulations. One of the girls grabs the heroine and starts examining her. She notices that Serafina's eyes are the same as those of the elder's wife. She evaluates the noblewoman's body, to which she reacts very sharply. The girl doesn't pay attention to her words. At this time, the man leaves. The heroine says that if the stranger wasn't a girl, she would have fought with her. She apologizes for her insolence. Serafina, like a true warrior, generously forgives her. Meanwhile, the kettle is boiling on the fire. The stranger takes off the teapot and says she is not sure if the Lord's wife would like tea. Serafina protests that she is not his wife. The girl hands the heroine the tea, offering to drink it before it gets cold. She sits down across from me and laughs. The main character takes a cup and watches the steam coming out of it. A hook creaks softly over the campfire. All the girls are sitting around an extinguished campfire. Serafina sighs and says she noticed one thing. She asks if the barbarians share the same bed with other families. Girls with children in their arms don't look like they're related. The heroine asks if they have a husband, the head of the family. Had he gone hunting now? One of the girls replies that her husband is dead. Serafina did not expect such an answer. It turned out that the woman's husband died in the Western War from his wounds when she was pregnant. The heroine realizes that the barbarian died at the hands of the Eastern expedition. She tries to justify herself by saying that it was their duty and everyone is equal in war. The heroine believes that she should not be sentimental about barbarians, but something changes in her soul when she looks at a mother with a child. She has no right to behave like this with them. The girl admits that the woman's husband died at the hands of the Eastern expedition and is ready for their hatred. She appears before them, realizing that she is the leader and the enemy. The family has the right to take revenge. The woman closes her eyes and asks why the girl is talking about such things. The heroine is surprised. The hostess of the house explains that the barbarian's life is full of dangers. They are often maimed and die while hunting. She is very sorry that her daughter does not see her father. On the other hand, she is glad that the girl will not see his demise either. She says that her husband gave her a child. The woman explains that in these parts, sons are raised to go to war. She doesn't want Serafina to take it personally. The main character watches a peaceful tea party, reflecting on the barbarian warriors, their wives and children. The girl comes to the conclusion that people here have a completely opposite attitude to death. Suddenly, a loud, prolonged sound is heard throughout the settlement. It is made by a man from an observation tower. The girls turn to look at him. The main character asks herself what kind of sound it could be. There is a scream that it is a dragon flute and they are being attacked. The house where the girls were staying is collapsing. The main character turns around and sees beams falling from the ceiling, raising clouds of dust around. Cecilia watches in fright while the hostess of the house hugs her daughter tightly. Cecilia knows that humans don't have such destructive power. A huge paw descends right in front of her. A huge monster bird looks down at the main character. The girl recognizes him as a dragon. The dragon is watching the main character. She wonders why he's targeting this particular house. The maid Cecilia wonders what Shikibaishi is doing here. Serafina asks her what it means. The maid explains that this is the name of the dragon species. Its peculiarity is that it arrives at the smell of smoke. It's very strange because the dragons from these surroundings don't attack villages. They know that when attacked, the barbarians will start hunting back. Serafina says, "You don't have to talk. You have to save yourself." She fears for the lives and health of women with children. The hostess of the house says that she is right, and we need to hurry to the soldiers. Cecilia agrees with her. The girl in the woman's arms starts crying. A loud sound irritates the dragon's ears and attracts its attention. He directs his gaze to the company. Cecilia realizes that things are very bad and she needs to save herself. The main character stares resolutely at the monster. The maid calls her to come with them, saying that if something happens to the girl, she will be to blame for the master. She refuses. Cecilia tries to drag her along, screaming, "Did Serafina really want to die here?" The girl replies that she has to tell them herself. It is considered normal for barbarians to sacrifice one of their own. Jorena is terribly annoyed by this. Serafina says that from now on she will call the maid by her first name, Cecilia, trying to warn her about the dragon attack. The girl asks who they take her for. The dragon opens its beak, while the main character stomps her foot and turns to attack, reminding everyone that she is the commander-in-chief of the Ildred Knight. The girl hits the dragon with all her might with some kind of iron object in the form of a stick. The maid is amazed at her dexterity. Serafina was able to fend off the dragon's attack with a poker. The girl stands victoriously in a combat readiness pose. Cecilia screams that this is beyond the bounds of common sense. The heroine says that talking spoils the moment. In addition, the dragon turns its head in their direction again. The main character says that after the dragon attack, She realized that this pitiful bird is nothing compared to the sword of the bearded barbarian. Serafina assures that as long as there are helpless people behind her, she will fight to the end. A huge dragon looms over the girl. He attacks the brave warrior defending the barbarians again. The main character deftly jumps up and points her improvised weapon at the monster's eye. It injures the dragon's visual organ. After such a strong rebuff, the bird loses its orientation in space. Cecilia admires the girl, noting that she is not a weakling at all, as the maid thought before. The dragon screams in pain and flaps its wings. Serafina turns to him, asking what everyone is staring at. She says she's deliberately distracting the monster from people so they can escape. Cecilia agrees to leave. The maid commands the women to grab their children and hide. She promises to catch up with them later. The girl struggles with herself internally. She asks the heroine to survive. Serafina asks again, and tells the maid not to underestimate her. This dragon doesn't have the strength to defeat the brave Serafina while the women and children are fleeing. Cecilia mumbles something incomprehensible, to which the girl gets annoyed and again demands that she save herself. The heroine looks forward and says that if the maid continues to stand, it will only hinder her from fighting. Cecilia can barely hold back her tears and says that if Serafina continues to show off, she will laugh at her when the dragon wins. She asks the girl to hold out until someone comes to help. She runs away from the destroyed house. The dragon looks after the maid, but the heroine distracts him, telling the bird not to stare around. Serafina holds out the poker, reminding him that she is his opponent. Meanwhile, there is a fight going on in the village with other dragons. Val, dressed in armor, along with his comrades, deals with the dragons that attacked the settlement. He says that he has been informed about the attack on the village of 4 dragons and asks where the other one is. At that moment, Cecilia runs in and shouts that Shikabakeshi attacked the house where the Lord left them. He turns his gaze to the agitated girl. The maid cries that Serafina tried to save them. Cecilia doesn't have time to finish saying that sulfur has become a bait for the dragon as the young man takes off. He runs towards the destroyed house at the speed of light. The maid looks after him, noting the unprecedented speed. Meanwhile, the main character continues to stand in front of the dragon with a poker in her hands. Her eyes are very serious. She thinks that if you fight in the open, then something can happen. However, the dragon surpasses the girl in speed. The one-eyed monster looks at her with a look full of rage. He definitely won't let her back down, even though he's not too strong. The dragon swings its beak and hits the poker with all its might, breaking Sarah's only weapon. She looks at the piece and realizes that she is to blame for making such an unforgivable mistake. The dragon prepares to attack by spreading its wings. The girl understands that the bird is smart, so she specifically disarmed the heroine. Serafina closes her eyes and remembers the women with children and Cecilia, for whom she gives her life. Until recently, she was fighting the barbarians, but now she protects them by helping them escape. She decides to die like a real knight. Val's scream reaches the heroine. He asks her to cover her ears. The man stuns the dragon with a thunderous roar. The dragon stops navigating. Taking advantage of the moment, the barbarian stabs her with his sword. The dragon's prostrate body falls to the ground. The man attacked him, blocking the main character. The girl looks at him in amazement and asks herself what just happened. Was it a thunderous roar? Val apologizes to her, saying he was a little late, and carefully removes the dragon's head helmet. He admits that as the future leader of the barbarians, he is grateful to Serafina for saving Chi-Chi and the women with children. He looks at her and says that he is very glad that the girl is safe and sound. The heroine is surprised by these words. Lord's warm gaze meets Serafina's, at which point she suddenly realizes something. Tears come to her eyes, and the girl remembers her past. She became a knight early, then a commander-in-chief. For the first time during the military expedition for the sake of homeland security, someone defended her. The area is plunged into the darkness of night. On the shore of the lake, the barbarians have lit bonfires and are having fun around them. Drums are being played everywhere, and the sounds of drinks being poured can be heard. Serafina sips from her horn. She sprawls on a chair and tells Cecilia that she can't do anything without these drinks now. The maid replies that the girl is too drunk. Drinking out of grief over that incident, she says, before she can finish her sentence. The girl says that her tears in front of everyone were a disgrace. She has shamed her honor as a knight and a noblewoman. The maid asks if she really thinks so. Cecilia says that the heroine, in her opinion, has become more friendly. She looks at her with incomprehension. Kichi says she was glad. When Serafina risked her life to save her, the girl leaves, but the noblewoman shouts at her to stop. The heroine notices that the maid is acting as if they are friends. Due to the fact that Sarah is drunk, she is even glad of this turn of events. She looks up at the starry sky and thinks about it, sipping a little more from the horn. A lot has happened today. The girl remembers how she came to the village and was surrounded by warriors, then fought a dragon without weapons. The main character recalls that she was ready to die the death of the brave, but her future fiancé saved her. She remembers the man's facial features, noting that it was very useful. He was the first one to protect her. She tries to push these thoughts away from herself. Voices are heard behind my back. Someone says that Ildrinskaya has come again. The heroine turns around. She hears a child's voice but does not feel the presence or footsteps of anyone. Small creatures hover around her on their wings. They are happy that the girl looked at them. One of the girls shouts to her friend that the heroine is interesting. Serafina squints, deciding that this is a hallucination. The girls with wings hold hands and start dancing around her. The girl asks herself what it is. She screams what kind of babies they are. Someone calls out to Sarah, noticing that the main character is a marvel. Serafina turns to a familiar voice and asks where the future groom disappeared after dinner. She immediately asks him a new question. Who are these little ones? He replies that there's no rush and something more amazing is about to happen. The heroine is at a loss. Barbarians gather around the girl to congratulate the Lord's bride, get to know her and thank her. Girls on wings scurry around. The barbarians offer to drink again and give the main character numerous gifts. They clink their mugs together. Everyone around, including the babies with wings, are tasting delicious dragon meat. The elders sit down to taste the drinks, and a girl in plants comes out of the water. The heroine watches all this and decides that she is imagining it all. One of the barbarians approaches her from behind. He greets Serafina, scaring her with an unexpected appearance. He says he never would have thought that Val would find a bride so quickly. The girl looks at the huge dwarf and asks who he is. The stranger raises the sword in front of him and presents it to Serafina, asking her to accept it and not be shy. She asks why to give her such an expensive thing, and what should she do with it. The Lord advises to accept him, because this grandfather forges first-class swords. She screams that that's not the point. The dwarf notices her shrill voice. Val invites her to look at the blade of the sword and says that she will not let it out of her hands later. The girl pulls the sword out of its scabbard and looks at the blade. She can evaluate it by eye. The heroine notices an engraving on it. Serafina admires the fineness and brilliance of the blade, marveling that it even has a spell cast on it. The master asks her if she likes the sword. He explains that the weapon is forged from a special metal that only he has. The silver alloy is called mithril in the West. The girl remembers the fairy tale, The Lord of the Wings. Grandfather says that he really belongs to a rather strange race of dwarves. Serafina decides that she is seeing both the sword and the dwarf. Val turns to her, asking if the girl understands that this is not a dream. She looks at him in disbelief. She says there is too much new information for her at one time. One dragon is already enough. The young man agrees that it can be understood, because the barbarians keep their distance from the West. There are many reasons for this, but more on them later. The girl asks why the dwarf came to her and handed her such a magnificent sword. She's a knight to keep her distance from. The Lord exchanges glances with his grandfather. They decide that the heroine forgot something out of excitement and surprise. Val says that she, as the future leader of the barbarians, wants to introduce the main character to the elders of the tribe. He introduces Serafina to the guardian of the forest, the elf Karku Rhoda, the spirit of the tree, Nimuhara, the leader of the fairies, Mrs. Bufake and her family, as well as 3 wise elders, forging masters named Vaz, Squas, and Balkat. The barbarian asks if he told Sarah that he went to a meeting with the elders in order to arrange their meeting. He notes that it's no wonder that, after the dragon attack, the main character lost everything from her head. Serafina recalls that conversation, feeling embarrassed for her behavior. The man asks why she clutches her head. The girl says she's completely forgotten about everything else except the dragons. She didn't expect to meet much more amazing creatures. Lord says that even though she thought they only existed in fairy tales, it turned out not to be the case. For their people, the elders are good neighbors. The heroine looks at the creatures. The elf says that all Westerners react to them that way. The winged girls are amused by the reaction of the main character, and the spirit of the tree offers her the fruit of the tree with a calming effect. Val explains that the elders and their family are the oldest clans, including the barbarians. They are called the 5 Great Clans. From time immemorial, the head of each clan chooses his heirs through the great spirits. Large and small clans go through their life cycle here. They unite in this cycle of life in order to survive together. On this earth, they were called a confederation of tribes and creatures that are associated with spirits, the man explains. The heroine repeats the names. She understands that all the tribes and their cultures are intertwined into one whole. The Lord confirms her assumption. He says that if there are no serious accidents, then they are just drinking friends. Serafina remarks that in this case, they are just a confederation of alcoholics. The heads of the tribes are vying to tell that each of them has contributed to the girl's life. Someone cast a spell on a sword, someone made jewelry for her, someone sewed a dress, and someone provided medicines. The heroine asks if they mean the Ildren's army by incidents. The elders start laughing. Serafina asks why they are laughing at her. They're responding that they didn't want to offend her. The conference was not created to get involved in territorial wars. The heroine asks again. She is indignant. Do the barbarians really take Ildren for animals? The man replies that they are almost animals themselves. He says that the conference was created to resolve territorial disputes between representatives of the same kind. Serafina does not understand why their union was created at all. She assumes that it is needed to withstand the onslaught of enemies. The heroine answers herself that there is no need for an alliance for dragons and other animals. She is surprised that everyone has become depressed. They tell her that dragons are really strong and intelligent creatures. Despite this, they're not that terrifying. There are no tribes that cannot resist them. Serafina asks what is terrifying in their understanding then. The man says that ghosts and devilish creatures, he says it won't be clear to her from the words. If the girl lives here, she will see them someday. Evil spirits are like a natural disaster. I don't even want to compare it with Ildren's army. The heroine gets scared. She screams at him to stop. As soon as Serafina starts thinking about it, her mood immediately drops. She offers to drink and forget everything. Val agrees that it is necessary to wash away the sadness with wine. It's already ceasing to look like a gathering of elders, the heroine notes. The feast ends when the elders are no longer able to do anything. The girl looks at them and sighs sadly that the great beings have so easily succumbed to the temptation of drinking. Suddenly, Serafina notices that the barbarian man has moved away from the company and is sitting on a boulder, looking into the distance. She asks the Lord if he has a minute. He replies that, of course, there is, and asks if the girl has sobered up. The heroine admits that she wants to talk about something. The outlines of 3 planets appear in a dark sky dotted with stars. Serafina approaches the man and stands next to him. There is an awkward pause in the air, broken only by the sounds of nature. The girl gathers her strength and says that it's too late to have such a conversation. She continues by admitting that the knights, including her, knew nothing about these lands. They didn't know battles. They didn't know the meaning of military expeditions. It's not just that. The girl says they killed men, unaware that their wives and children were waiting for them. Not even like that, they knew it perfectly well. They just pretended they didn't care. The knights only despised and attacked barbarians they had no idea about. They were not ashamed of anything, justifying this aggression by saying that they were fulfilling a great duty. The heroine admits that she considered Val an enemy to be hated. During these days, as she got to know the barbarian's character a little better, she realized that she was wrong. However, she is still a noble of Ildren, and she still strives to save her depleted country and people. If she returns home with new knowledge, she may be able to carry out her plans. She asks Varvara not to think that by being here, she is living up to his expectations. The man says that's what he thought, but even so, he won't give up. The heroine says that she only expressed her feelings of a knight. As for her personal issues, the girl blushes. She seems to like Val. The man pronounces her name in amazement. He says he's now convinced that it's not fair to make such a face. The girl asks what it means. Val teases her. The main character wakes up from the sun shining in her face. Her head is already starting to hurt in the morning. Cecilia hovers over her, asking if she's awake. The girl jumps up in surprise and hits her head against the maid. She asks why the heroine got up so suddenly. Chi-Chi gets up from the ground while Serafina apologizes to her. The maid says that the elders have already left and the day is in full swing, so she decided to wake the girl up. The heroine is surprised that it is already afternoon. Cecilia nods and says that Serafina drank too much yesterday. The girl is trying to remember the events of yesterday through a headache. Images of the elders come to mind. She remembers that fairies and dwarfs actually exist. Even though she spent the whole night with them, she still finds it hard to believe. The girl pays attention to some object lying next to her. It's a mithril sword forged by a dwarf. He looks like he's in a fairy tale. The girl examines him. No, this is not a fairy tale, but a reality. The main character still doesn't know so much. The heroine raises the blade to the sky and looks at herself in its reflection. She remembers that there was something else she wanted to say. The heroine says that the blade of the sword is perfectly smooth and even. The sword itself is of moderate thickness with decorative inserts. The weight of the sword is evenly distributed in the hand, which ensures freedom of movement. The leather, tight-fitting handle is very soft and pleasant to the touch. The most important thing is that the blade shines like a pearl. The girl exclaims how beautiful he is. Cecilia had never seen such an expression on her face before. A man's voice is heard from behind. He notices that the heroine liked the sword, saying that her grandfather, who forged it especially for her, would surely be happy about it. The heroine turns to him and says that the sword is really exceptional. We should thank the dwarf, she agrees. Seeing the man's shaved face, the main character screams, asking where his thick beard is. She exclaims, "Did he shave?" The barbarian replies that he does this quite rarely, as the beard grows too fast. He reminds the main character that yesterday she made a very romantic speech, which was the reason for shaving off her beard. The girl does not remember what happened last night, and asks the barbarian if there was anything else besides the elders. She replays her conversation with Val in her head, and remembers how she confessed her liking for him. Serafina is horrified. She starts to justify herself, shouting that she was out of her mind and was talking about something. The man asks regretfully if she really drank too much. He gets upset, but he understands that it happens when a person gets drunk and says everything indiscriminately. The heroine asks if he wants to accuse her of being impudent, and that the girl takes back her words. The barbarian refuses. Serafina admits that she spoke from the bottom of her heart last night, and this should not be mocked. Cecilia asks if her words are true. Val smiles and says that the sober heroine behaves very differently. She clicks her tongue and says that she remembered how the young man told her about it yesterday. He nods, saying that's what he meant. The maid asks what the hell. The man turns to her and says it's good that she doesn't notice it. The main character asks what he's talking about. Cecilia shoves a piece of meat into her mouth at this moment. The girl coughs, and the maid begs for forgiveness. Serafina asks what kind of meat it is that smells so delicious and exudes meat juice. Cecilia replies that it's dragon meat, cooked in a special way. The heroine doesn't like the food, but she eats, asking whose meat is here. The maid replies that the meat of Shaike is Bikeshi, the dragon she fought yesterday. Serafina remembers her duel and screams, "Is this really the meat of that bird?" "It's a dragon," Cecilia corrects. The girl demands to have another piece brought to her. The maid is surprised by her appetite, because she thought that she would not want to finish eating. The heroine says that you should not underestimate her. Yesterday, she decided that she would thoroughly explore this land. After chewing the meat, she promises that she will borrow the best from other crops and bring it to her country. Cecilia notices that the girl has a rather pleasant personality once she gets loose. The barbarian suggests that Serafina take a walk. He says someone found out about her this morning and wants to meet her. The heroine asks if it's really her they're waiting for. The man replies that it is. He says that since the warrior has decided to explore their lands, she will need a guide. Someone she already knows will be much safer. The girl looks at him with incomprehension. She wonders which one of her acquaintances the barbarian is talking about. They pass through the narrow streets of the settlement. The barbarians make way for the gentleman and the girl to pass. Someone asks if it would be better to call the heroine his wife. The young man just smiles and walks on. Seraphine continues to think about his words. No one she knows comes to mind. Could it be one of her former rivals? Val says they've arrived, and the girl notices a woman in her position meeting them on the doorstep. The man is talking. That it was not necessary to wait for them on the street, but the woman replies that she does not find a place for herself. She turns to Serafina, telling her how long it's been since they've seen each other. The stranger expresses her joy at the nobility of the heroine, who protected mothers and their children from the dragon. She looks at her uncertainly. She apologizes and asks who the woman with one eye is. The stranger replies that she has changed a little since then. She says her name, saying that her name is Nelia. This doesn't mean anything to Serafina, and she continues to stare with incomprehension. The woman recalls that she served her during the Eastern Expedition 4 years ago. She asks if her character remembers her. The girl remembers that Nelia joined their squad as her subordinate. They fought side by side with her for 3 years, when, after one of the battles, the heroine found out about her death. She screams and asks if that woman is her subordinate from Viscount Philomar's family. She replies that it's true. Serafina notices that her friend is pregnant. The woman speaks that this is her second child, plunging the heroine into even more shock. Serafina can't believe that so much can happen in 4 years. Nyla says she still has something to tell. She invites the girl into the house. They haven't seen each other for a very long time. The woman says that she heard from her husband about the crystal shell and realized that it was about someone from the Eastern expedition. The heroine can't get used to the fact that her friend has a husband. Nalia says that she was married to a man who defeated her in the war. To her surprise, the woman got very used to this place. 4 years ago, she was a knight of the Eastern expedition. Now it seems to her that she has lived the life of another person. That's how it is, says Serafina. She warns the woman that she's going to change the subject. The girl asks why Nalia sent the message through Val, because it could have been done through a maid. The woman replies that the principles here are slightly different. The Lord is too conspicuous, so she decided to ask him. The man was really striking due to his tall stature and huge voice. Something about it seemed suspicious to her. Serafina is suspicious of the barbarian, saying that the man's appearance does not match his age. Nyla explains that shaving does not rejuvenate Valkoon. He's an 18-year-old boy himself, and a beard is just a barbarian thing. The young man says that the woman is married to his older cousin. In other words, they are relatives. Nyla says she was also shocked when she first saw him. Varvara's mother explained everything to her. Val laughs, remembering this. A thought comes to the heroine's mind. Was the young man only 18 years old? She is extremely surprised. Val asks if he didn't tell her about it. The girl screams that she hears it for the first time. Lord reassures her that age is not an obstacle, trying to calculate how old Serafina is, but she interrupts him, shouting at him to be silent. The man says that the heroine is in the prime of her life and is his type. The girl replies that it is unpleasant to hear this from a younger person. Did you really decide to brag about your age? She asks. The young man smiles tenderly and says with sadness in his voice that he regrets that he was not born earlier. She asks why this is. Val replies that if he had been born earlier, he would have met her sooner, and the girl would not have paid attention to the age difference. Serafina asks him to listen carefully and remember, since the barbarian had decided to compose fairy tales, she would not even become his bride in the future. The young man is amazed by the girl's words and gets lost from her answer. He coughs awkwardly and holds back the tremor in his voice. The young man takes in as much air as possible, and blushing, he covers his eyes with his hand. The main character is adamant. All the members of the company are sitting around the campfire in the hut and watching his further actions. Val bows his head to Serafina, respectfully calling her by her full name, and begs her forgiveness. He says that he showed extreme arrogance and impudence towards the warrior. The girl agrees. It's good that he understood. The maid, who was watching their conversation, asks the woman why Val apologized to Sarah. She replies that Chi-Chi doesn't understand because she hasn't been to war. She asks Cecilia if Serafina was injured after the fight with the Lord. The maid says no, but her sword was damaged, but not broken. The woman says that this is the reason. She gives an example from her life, saying that the only way to resolve a dispute is to disarm your opponent. The barbarian hacked at the dragons with his sword many times, but was unable to cut through Serafina's steel sword. He won by crushing her with his great strength, thanks to the best outfit. If he had opened up for a counterattack even a little bit, most likely, the woman doesn't finish the sentence. Cecilia already understands what the outcome of the battle should have been. Nylia says that war is necessary in order to properly equip. Besides, the Lord did not use thunderous roars. She turns to the barbarian and says that he has lost to the enemy in skills and is proud for nothing. The young man blushes and apologizes. He sips a drink from his glass and once again apologizes to Serafina, who is sitting across from him. He thanks for the luck that helped him win, and most importantly for the recognition given by the girl. The main character was taken aback, and then, with an upset look, said that it was unfair to say that. Nalia and Kichi ask why the young man and the girl won't hug once they've confessed to each other. Serafina swears at them, saying that both have no shame. A man with a child in his arms approaches the house, from which the girl's arguments and declarations of love from Val can be heard. He goes inside the hut. The woman greets him, calling him by name. Niley's husband's name is Bidar. He pays attention to the guests, noting with a smile that the house is noisy due to the presence of a crystal ball. Everyone present starts talking at once, greeting Bidar. The pregnant wife rushes to meet him. She takes the baby from his arms. The man says that their son has become a better runner, so when he grows up, it will be possible to give him a sword in his hands. The heroine is surprised that this is Nayli's son. She's lost in her memories. Young Nyla was always happy to fight under her command. The former warrior believed that God had rewarded them with the mission to fight the barbarians and give their fields a second life. Serafina notices how much her friend has changed. She looks much happier now than ever before. She looks at the couple where the husband is taking care of his beloved and catches herself thinking how good they must be. Suddenly, the girl comes to her senses. Had she said that out loud? It's careless of her, because she doesn't want to marry Val. Serafina tries her best to take back her words, but a happy exclamation has already escaped her lips. It's been a few days since the heroine got to the village of Ozernoye. It was already the 10th day of her stay here. With a grin, the girl swings her new sword and cuts a wooden log into pieces. With precise movements, she cuts the logs lengthwise and across, crushing the boards into small pieces. Serafina stops and exhales. Unfortunately, Cecilia says that there is enough training for today. The maid says that in 3 days, the heroine chopped a 3-week supply of firewood. She asks where such zeal comes from. The girl replies that a comfortable life dulls the body. Besides, it is necessary to get used to a new sword. Cecilia understands why the heroine did not use an axe. The cuts left by the sword are like a mirror. Cecilia asks if Serafina decided to do this out of boredom. The girl replied that she was used to training. At first she was interested in landscapes, but then she realized that she had nothing to do. The maid asks if she has any experience in housekeeping. The girl replies that she worked as a maid under the supervision of the knights. The heroine's grandfather took care of his granddaughter and exerted a strong influence on the guy she served. Cecilia says that the owner figured out how to save Serafina from idleness, but told her that it was a secret. Apparently, the barbarian warriors are leaving the village under the leadership of Val, the maid thought. The man called out to Serafina, asking why she shouldn't fight with his warriors since she had so much time. He waved his hand at the heroine, beckoning her to him. And that's all he could think of, Cecilia drawled. The heroine rejoices, remembering that she has not fought for 2 weeks. The girl agreed with admiration. Serafina asks how she can fight without armor. The barbarian calms her down, saying that there is no need to worry. The young man asks the maid to provide his beloved with armor. She promises that she will carry out the order. The heroine was very surprised by the barbarian's proposal. Cecilia warns that armor will be more difficult to prepare than regular clothes. She says they weren't particularly cared for, just dusted and oiled. That's enough, says Serafina. It turns out that the armor had been lying in the corner of the room all this time because the man didn't want to destroy it. The maid opens the drawer containing the uniforms and offers the heroine to use them. The girl examines the helmet, noticing that it was damaged in the battle. Cecilia says she'll help her get dressed. Serafina asks if she knows how to put on the armor. The maid replies that she knows because she took them off her. Serafina knows how to take off her armor herself, but decides to keep quiet so as not to bother Cecilia with questions. She gathers her hair into a high ponytail and, with the help of a skilled maid, puts on her uniform again. Serafina checks her armor and heads for the exit of the hut, ready to fight again. She appears before the barbarians in a uniform that she has already come to love for its heaviness and apologizes for waiting. The commander-in-chief of the Ildren Knight, or rather the Crystal Shalom, will keep them company, she says. Excitement is rippling through the ranks. Everyone wants to go out to fight against Crystal Shalom and see her skills. Val says that the battle will be fought with wooden swords, and her opponent will be a young fighter who has been to war for the first time. The Lord shouts his name and orders the warrior Raham, the son of the pale tusk Gamaron, to fight with honor. The command is given to start the match. Ram shouts for Serafina to fight with full force. She deflects the inept novice's attack with her shield, pushing him back. He falls down and loses the fight. He told me not to hold back, she says. Raham's father, Pale Tusk Gamaran, joins the fight in place of his son, confident that he will win. The man runs into the heroine, but receives the same retaliatory blow from Serafina as his offspring. It's obvious that they're father and son. Swordsmanship and movement are the same, the main character notes with disappointment. The barbarians look at the defeated, praising the girl's skill. In a real fight, she would have killed both of them. The two-headed Grey enters the battle. The crowd cheers on the barbarian. They come together in battle, but even here the girl prevails. Cecilia, watching this, is surprised by the strength of the main character, noting that barbarian warriors are not weaklings. It turns out that Ildren has a warrior with such willpower, says Mrs. Buffmake, who flew up to her. Cecilia says that Val tried to explain to her what it was, but she didn't understand. Willpower is a feeling and the ability to achieve goals, explains Buffmake. The flight of birds, the swimming of fish, the power of dragons and her ability live with them. And the barbarians' willpower is beyond estimation, thanks to it they fight. Therefore, the outcome of the battle with the barbarian depends on the opponent's willpower. The elder notices that the bullets from the dwarves' guns fly out so fast that the dragons don't have time to react. She says she knows so much because fairies have no blood or flesh. They can see the will of the whole neighborhood as if from a dream. The rest of the elders have flesh, and they live much longer than the barbarians, explains the fairy. Human life is too short to fulfill all your plans. Centenarians notice how people try to overcome all difficulties with their willpower. For them, it's like a dazzling ray that doesn't stop sparkling. The fairy ends her speech. Cecilia looks at her with respect. Ms. Buffmike says that her hobby is watching such rays. She points at the warriors as she speaks, that the most interesting fight is already starting. The future leader of the barbarians comes out against Serafina. The girl looks at Val and says that the fight in the barbarian circle is very similar to their repeated fight. He says that it is, noting that this time he does not have the advantage of a real sword. The man asks her to get ready. The signal for the start of the duel is heard, and the barbarian rushes at the heroine, shouting that he will defeat her. The girl dodges the attack. Lord notes the smoothness of her parry, realizing that if he had seen it for the first time, he would have lost his head. He lets out a cry and unleashes a series of attacks on Serafina, which she still successfully evades. The young man tries to make a cut, but the girl skillfully jumps, making somersaults in the air. She realizes that she can no longer evade and must resist his onslaught. The girl calculates the direction and speed of the attack, realizing that she will not be able to block it. In that case, she decides to break her opponent's sword. The heroine strikes a wooden blade. Both warriors jump away from each other to a safe distance, paying attention to the broken blades. The crowd gasps. The barbarian and the warrior end the duel in a draw. The girl sighs that she has squandered the victory. The man laughs, saying that he has already lost to her before and is not going to concede victory to the heroine again. The girl does not miss the opportunity to tease the young man about his age. Eiichi replies that when it comes to fighting, age doesn't matter. He asks Serafina if she was able to dispel boredom. The girl closes her eyes with satisfaction. The main character says that she is very happy and feels cheerful. A flock of birds rises screaming from the forest and the mountains. Someone hiding in the undergrowth is swearing. Crushing the grass with his foot, the man says that the barbarians, who have no fear of the gods, repeatedly resisted the sacred mission of the Eastern expedition. An unknown girl says that the leader of the expedition was abducted. She is indignant at how barbarians dare to blacken the history of people, and says that there is a limit to all arrogance. The stranger looks at her watch and promises that Mrs. Serafina will be saved. They must do this for the sake of their glory and the long-term conquest of the East, she continues, standing surrounded by knights and looking into the distance. A group of barbarians ran after a dragon through the forest. They were holding their weapons and chasing the monster very fast, steering the course and encouraging each other, saying that there was still a little bit left. The big monster was also being chased by Val, who almost caught up with the monster, running almost in front of it. A large monster chasing Val collided with a large tree, breaking it in half. Val stood in front of the stopped monster, luring it to the trap. Going straight to Val, the monster's paw gets trapped, causing him to fall to the ground. The monster fell with a big crash. Watching it, Val ordered his barbarians to tie up the monster. After that, ropes rained down from different directions directly on the monster. The monster was tied up so tightly that it couldn't open its mouth and move. Then Val shouted to Sarah that she had 15 seconds and she needed to aim at the monster's fourth eye. At this time, Serafina appeared from the direction of the forest, who was very quickly heading towards the monster, shouting to Val to trust her. Pulling out her sword, Sarah jumped at the bound monster while looking at its 4 eyes. She swung her sword and aimed it directly at the monster's fourth eye, completely destroying it. After that, the monster howled in pain as it freed itself from the ropes. But Sarah couldn't keep her balance and fell to the ground. But Val caught her in time, saving her from falling. At the same time, the monster was howling very loudly in pain, after which, losing its fourth eye, the monster fell to the ground, losing its vitality and not moving. Then all the barbarians began to rejoice, saying that sulfur had killed the monster. Sarah awkwardly wondered why she had joined their hunt. On the same day, in the morning, Val asked the barbarian man that a huge dragon had climbed out of the western part of the forest. to which the man confirmed, saying that the dragon was discovered by his barbarians. The man continued by saying that according to one warrior, the wounds that were inflicted on him were seen by other dragons, to which Val replied that it was strange, because their people wouldn't do that. Then he asked the man if he had contacted him, so he had some problems, to which the man replied in agreement. The man informed them that there, in the forest to the west, another monster had been discovered, and it was coming from the direction of the elves. Val was surprised by this, thinking that elves are a manifestation of nature. After that, Val stood up and said it would be bad if they didn't stop them, then asked the man to order his soldiers to prepare for capture, to which the man listened to Val's order. After the man left, Val, looking after him, told Sarah that they also needed to pack, then asked her what she would do, because hunting was in their plans today. Sarah looked at him in surprise. Sarah asked in surprise that this was a dragon hunt, and replied that she thought she was going and talking in all seriousness. Sarah was happy, saying that she hadn't fought for so long and she missed her. To which Kichi unhappily reminded her of her recent words that she would be wary of them. Sarah, putting on her armor, asked Kichi in surprise if she would go, to which Kichi replied that she would not go. That's about how they gathered, and then they went to the western part of the forest and found that very huge dragon there. They quickly overpowered him and tied him up. Looking at the dead dragon, Sarah said in surprise that it was still huge and about 15 meters tall for sure. Sarah turned to Val, asking him that the dragon's name was Mollis Berry, to which Val confirmed that he was special. Sarah then asked him why the dragon was so different from the others, to which Val asked to look closely because the dragon had 6 legs. Val continued by saying that the legends said that dragons used to be able to fly, and that instead of these 2 legs there were wings. The dragon's body is still very different. Sarah said it looked a little weird. Val said that these are the Mollis Berry dragons, and sometimes, of course, they drop in on them. Sarah was surprised by Val's story, saying that they needed to get back to business. The barbarians surrounding the monster studied its body. Suddenly, someone calls Sarah and Val, asking them to come to him. Then Val said that it seemed the barbarians had found some kind of clue and invited Sarah with them, with which she agreed to follow him. The barbarian who called them pointed to the wound on the dragon's front legs and said that he had never seen such a thing before. The 3 of them looked at the wound, and then Val suggested that it was a burn, to which the barbarian denied, saying that it was not a simple burn. Val said it looked like magic used by the forest dwellers, to which Sarah asked what it was like with her sword. Val, without answering, said that this magic was borrowed from someone. Val said that there was something wrong with this burn, and usually they always get killed when hunting, then suggested that it might be Westerners. Val asked Sarah if she had anyone in mind, to which she replied that no one could come to mind. Sarah said thoughtfully that these were the ones who used magic the same way as the elves. Then I remembered an event in my head, not believing it. Sarah said out loud that it was impossible, to which Val noticed and asked her if she remembered something. Sarah replied that even if there is someone in the West who possesses similar magic, there can only be one person. Sarah explained that these people are representatives of their state religion and that they only do their own business in the temple, and she had not heard that they had ever fought. At that moment, someone was vehemently agreeing with Sarah's words. Val and Sarah turned around at the response and saw in front of them the fairy Mrs. Bufake, who was loudly saying that it was Ildren and they had been found. Sarah was surprised, telling Bufake that she had just appeared out of nowhere. Bofmek proudly replied to Sarah that she moved in space as she wanted, to which Sarah was surprised to say that this was the first time she had heard about it. Then, putting the subject aside, Sarah asked the fairies what she had told them. Bjor turned to Sarah, saying that she could remember this place as a village of forest people, to which Bufake agreed, saying that it was very interesting here. Then the fairy said worriedly, something strange is happening at the moment. Buffmake reported that fools have been discovered in the west of the forest who use science without catalysts, and it seems that they will soon come to a standstill. Val was very surprised by this news, asking if it was true. After that, Val turned to everyone, loudly telling them to listen to him, and gave the order that 4 of them stay to finish the matter with the dragon, while the rest followed him. At this time, Sarah thought about the word stagnation. Sarah told herself aloud that this was the first time she had seen Val raise her voice, and it felt like she had heard it before. She wondered if she would remember before they arrived at the place. Wearing his Val mask, he explained to Sarah that stagnation is monsters. After that, they all ran to the scene of the incident. Looking around, Sarah thought about the corpses of knights and several dead dragons, But suddenly, the whole squad saw a bright light on their way, notifying everyone about it. Coming forward, Sarah saw a nun girl with glasses in front of her and was surprised, thinking that she was right, but she had no idea that it would be Chaplain Marcia's. After that, Sarah called her name loudly. Marcius, noticing Sarah, was surprised, saying that it was Mrs. Serafina, and asked Lavillant for applause. Beor appeared behind Sarah, asking her if she knew Marcius, to which Sarah replied that Marcius was with them in the squad. Sarah complained that Marcius was very pious and praised her homeland the most. Val thought about it and said that they would fight with half their strength. Val listed them, saying that Marcius killed a dragon, started a fire, and he understands this, but he still couldn't understand one thing. To which Marcius clicked her tongue in displeasure and was greatly alarmed by Val's words. Marcius turned to Sarah with displeasure, telling him not to listen to Val, and she would kill him. But Sarah loudly ordered Marcius to calm down and think about her situation. Marcius was surprised to hear the word about the situation and desperately said that there had been no situation for a long time and they were just doing their duty. Marcius angrily said that they had to destroy these barbarians, and she could not even imagine that Sarah would change her principle, which had been followed for all 7 years. But suddenly, Marcius noticed something, surprised. Marcius turned to Serafina in surprise, asking that she might have been forcibly persuaded to side with the barbarians, to which Sarah loudly shouted in denial. After that, Marcius invited her to return to them. At this time, Beoval intervened, addressing Marcius, suggesting that she consider peace negotiations. But Marcius interrupted him angrily, telling him not to dare to talk to her. After that, Marcius took her book and began to read magic spells from it. Sarah called out to her, asking her to stop, but Marcius continued, not listening to anyone. Gathering her magic power, Marcius pointed her hand at Val. The magic arrow hit the tree next to Val. When Sarah saw the arrow, she thought that the dragon had been killed with that arrow. Marcius, still holding the book in her hands, loudly told Val to bow before God's miracle. Marcius looked at Sarah with crazy eyes, asking her if she had seen it, and claiming that the Lord had approved of her decision, and now Varvara Val would not be in this world. To which Val replied to Marcius that she was wrong, and there was no need to be proud that she had hit a tree. Mrs. Buffmake strongly agreed with this. Their words made Marcius even angrier. After that, with a stony face, Marcius said that anyone who disobeyed the Lord God should leave this world without any mercy. After directing magic at Val, Marcius told him to be punished. The magic arrow hit Val directly, while Sarah looked at him with fright, calling his name. Marcius was looking at them and laughing loudly, rejoicing at God's punishment, but suddenly she heard Val's voice and looked at him in surprise. Val, fully dressed in armor, was heading towards Marcius and angrily told her that he would not forgive her for this, and if she wanted to kill him so much, she should try. Sarah looked at Val with hope in her eyes, while Marcius, hearing these words, became even more angry. Shaking with anger, Marcius asked Val how dare he tell her to try, and viciously cursing Val, she said he would get it in full. At that time, Val shouted loudly at her to stop because she would destroy everything around her, which would make her regret it, to which Marcius replied angrily that he had realized it too late. The nature around them began to gradually lose its power and turn into dust. Sarah, noticing this, was surprised, saying that the leaves were falling off and everything around was turning to dust. Then Buffmake approached Sarah and said in fright that the power of the earth was running out and felt sorry for the trees, to which Sarah asked her in surprise what it meant. At this time, Val exhaled and turned to Sarah, apologizing and saying that Marcius could not be saved because it was too late. Marcius was reciting a spell from a book at that time, and the roots of the trees were enveloping her. Noticing the roots of the trees, Marcius asked in surprise what it was, and cursing, asked the trees not to climb up to her. The trees began to squeeze Marcius's body even more tightly around her. Sarah, surprised, told Val that it was necessary to save Marcius, to which Val replied that it was impossible. Sarah excitedly said that there was a risk, but she couldn't leave Marcius like this, to which Val replied that this was not their case, which surprised Sarah. Marcius was already completely immobilized and was looking at the black roots in fright. Val said that the stagnation, the monsters, had come out. The black roots with multiple eyes immobilized Marcius, who was kicking and saying in fright that she couldn't move. On the verge of fright, Marcius was almost crying while swearing. The others watched as the monsters consumed Marcius. and at that time Val called Sarah and said he would stab her because the monsters only consume her and there is a chance in this, to which Sarah called his name in surprise. Val worriedly said that later Marcius would become like these monsters and it would be better for her to die right now. Sarah looked at the immobilized Marcius and thought bitterly about her situation. Marcius, already without clothes and completely under the power of monsters, asked everyone not to look at her and asked for help from God. The Marcius knights called her name at that time, after which one of them ran straight to her trying to free her. The knight cut the monster's body with his sword, but was very surprised that the monster's body quickly recovered and, pointing his eyes at him, was preparing to strike him. After being hit by the monster, the knight was destroyed very quickly. His partner from behind was very stunned. After that, the monster, having already noticed him, directed his blow at him, from which his partner quickly fell back a few meters and was dead. Watching all this, Marcius cried and begged the tentacles of the monster to stop touching her and free her. Suddenly, Sarah called Val and apologized, saying that she probably shouldn't interfere, but two people were dying in front of her eyes and her conscience wouldn't let her. After that, Sarah quickly headed straight for the monster. As she walked, she kept thinking that her conscience wouldn't allow it, and with quick movements, she dodged the monster's blows. Marcius was already gradually losing consciousness at that time and was delirious and begged to be saved. Sarah confidently walked straight towards her and thought that she couldn't just leave like that. After that, she cut off the tentacles that Marcius was holding. Marcius lost consciousness, but the tentacles still wouldn't let go of her. Back then, Sarah thought that if she gathered enough magic, she would be able to pull it out. Suddenly, a tentacle appeared under Sarah's feet, which grabbed Sarah's arm. Sarah immediately pointed her sword at the tentacle, thinking that this was not the end. Suddenly, someone hit the monster with their powerful attack from behind them, causing half of the monster's body to be destroyed. Sarah, looking back, thought that this was a thunderclap attack. At that time, Val was approaching him. Val grabbed Sarah from behind, asking her if she was okay, to which she apologized and agreed. Sarah then asked Val not to stop her because they didn't have much time. Then Val replied that he would help her, which surprised Sarah. Sarah asked Val if this was possible, to which Val replied that it was not certain, but if they did it wrong, many people would die. Sarah asked in surprise how all this would turn out. Val then replied to Sarah that if she wanted to save them all, they would do everything together. Sarah was surprised and delighted by his words and awkwardly thanked him, which made Val smile at her. Heading towards the monster, Val ordered Sarah to go with him. Following Val, Sarah asked him what their plan was, to which Val replied that he had made a crack with his thunder call, their warriors would help them and finish with one blow. Val stabbed the monster with his sword, while the rest of the warriors attacked the monster. Then a crack appeared in front of them, in which the body was almost gone. Sarah, seeing the crack, thought decisively that this was it and felt sorry for Marcius. After that, she grabbed her sword, which was charged with magic, and mentally asked herself not to think about anything. Val then shouted loudly to Sarah to attack, after which Sarah made her strike at the crack. Sarah stabbed her sword right into Marcius's body, causing Marcius to open her eyes and look at her with a smile. Sarah hit the monster with her powerful punch, then jumped to the ground and turned around to see if it had worked or not. But suddenly, an unconscious Marcius flies right on her head, causing Sarah to exhale painfully. Val, frightened, calls Sarah and runs straight to her. Sarah was losing consciousness at that time, saying that everything had worked out. Some time later, Marcius opened her eyes, saying that she seemed to have had a terrible dream. After that, she saw handcuffs on her hands and was very surprised, loudly asking what it meant. Suddenly, Marcius heard a strange sound from the side of the grate and saw Val, Sarah, and Cecilia there. Marcius was shaking with fear, saying that she was getting scarier, and prayed to God for help. Marcius looked at Val with tear-stained eyes, who said that she had already woken up. Marcius rushed to the corner of the room, pointing at Val in fright and saying that he wanted to kill her again, to which Val looked at her awkwardly, saying nothing. Marcius was terrified and threatened Val so that he would not touch her, because God could punish him, which made Val a little angry, but he didn't say anything to her. Marcius also added that he should return her things to her, because they were unworthy of being with him. Val made a thoughtful face and tiredly said that, as he thought, they would not be able to talk to her on their own. Cecilia spitefully said that she imagined Marcius to be completely different. Marcius asked with displeasure who would talk to the barbarians at all, and she would only talk to Mrs. Serafina. Marcius started calling Sarah and asked her to teach Varvar Val a lesson, to which Val said with displeasure that Marcia was noisy and apologized to Sarah, asking to talk. But when Val turned around, he was surprised, calling Sarah by name. Val asked Sarah in surprise why she was crying, to which, wiping away her tears and blushing all over, Sarah replied that she remembered a lot of things and felt ashamed. Then Val, looking disappointed at Marcius, said that Sarah was more forgiving, which made Sarah blush even more, asking not to say such a thing. After seeing their relationship, Marcius was surprised, remembering everything that had happened and calling out to them. Marcius asked Sarah in surprise why they were so friendly towards each other in the forest, to which Sarah awkwardly began her reply. Sarah said that, as the captain of the knights of the first unit of the Kingdom of Ildren announces right here and now, she will no longer fight with the barbarians. These words made Marcius dizzy with surprise and did not understand anything. Marcius asked in surprise what Sarah meant, because she had only recently hated them, to which Sarah replied that she was no longer there. Marcius asked her in surprise why this was so. Then Sarah thoughtfully replied that she didn't even know herself, because when she came here, she realized how many things were incomprehensible here, so she decided to stay until she found out everything about the barbarians. Sarah added that Marcius might not remember, but Val helped her save her, and certainly not out of sympathy. From what Marcius fell into a stupor from this information. Sarah said that, however, an obligation is an obligation, and one should not take revenge in this way, because it is contrary to the principles of Marcius. Marcius blushed when she heard these words, saying that it was true, but she could not do otherwise. Sarah resolutely called Marcius by name. Then, trembling with tears, Marcius sadly turned to Sarah, saying that she had gone through so much, but she could not even think that Sarah would go over to the side of the barbarians. Everyone present was surprised by her words and emotions without saying anything. Marcius continued by saying that Sarah was a night girl, the best of the squads. At this time, Val awkwardly asked Sarah what was going on here, to which Sarah awkwardly replied that Marcius had started crying and she had always been weak in controlling emotions. Taking off her glasses and wiping away her tears, Marcius sadly said that, as a knight, she could not accept this, and she felt sorry for Sarah's wards. Cecilia looked at Marcius and thought she was weird. Sarah, embarrassed, turned to Marcius, asking not to shame her, because that's how she can believe. But Marcius looked at Sarah and asked her what kind of view it was. Sarah looked at her clothes, and Marcius continued to describe that her big, beautiful breasts were open, and the collar around her neck was a shame. After that, Marcius roared even more, saying that she was right and Sarah became Val's hostage and it hurt so much. Sarah was embarrassingly shouting at her that she was wrong. Sarah, displeased, called Marcius and asked her not to forget what she had told her. But Marcius didn't stop, continuing her topic. Marcius sadly said what Queen Ildren, Lady Wisteria, would think of Sarah, because if she found out that the girl she had high hopes for had just betrayed her. After her words, Sarah remembered her queen and regretfully told Marcius that she was right here. When Val heard the queen's name, he remembered something and asked them about it. Val said that if he was not mistaken, then a man with that name had died in the West. Sarah and Marcius looked at Val in surprise at the same time. Val said thoughtfully that even though it had been 20 years since his disappearance, he might be confusing something, to which Marcius angrily turned to Val so that he would not dare to talk about her like that. Marcius asked Val with displeasure if he understood at least what kind of great person he was talking about, because the queen was recognized as a mother to all the inhabitants of Ildren, to which Val replied that he had not heard of such a thing. Val then suggested to them that if they wanted to see the queen, he could help with that, to which Marcius and Sarah were surprised. Cecilia, looking at Val, cunningly thought that things were getting more interesting here. Val called Sarah and Marcius by name, drawing their attention to himself. Val calmly said that the woman who came from the West 20 years ago was his mother. Upon hearing this, Sarah and Marcius were very surprised. Val called Sarah and Marcius by name and said that the woman they were talking about was his mother. Sarah was surprised, and Marcius was stunned by this information, shouting loudly and wondering. Some time later, Sarah was sitting next to the boiled water, drinking a cup of tea. Sarah said that she was surprised, of course, but she would be able to accept it, to which Cecilia looked at her with interest. Marcius asked her why. Marcius, with her hands tied, said with displeasure that she could not believe the barbarian's words, because he wanted to deceive them. Sarah calmly said that a little earlier, she would also have thought about why Marcius asked about what was happening now. Then Sarah thought for a moment, not knowing how to say it, and replied that now she had decided that perhaps she could take over what was here in the east to the west. Marcius was surprised by her words. Sarah also added that female knights are not welcome on their land, which made Marcius even more surprised. Sarah also informed Marcius about Nyla, who they thought had died 4 years ago, here alive. Marcius was even more confused by this news. Sheepishly, Sarah added that she was also engaged to Val, then sheepishly said it was too hot in here. Marcius was even more surprised, and Cecilia watched Sarah's embarrassment with interest. Uncomprehendingly, Marcius asked Sarah why she had such a face, to which Sarah said that this was not yet certain, and it was a tradition here that the loser should marry the winner, to which Cecilia agreed. Sheepishly, Sarah said that she had not agreed yet, and her goal was to explore this place in order to use this information in her homeland in the future. But Cecilia cunningly said that it was written all over Sarah's face. Exhaling, Sarah turned to Marcius and asked her to think for herself, because does it make sense for someone like Val to lie about his mother being Wisteria? Sarah reminded Marcius that she knows better than anyone that lying about your family is a terrible sin, to which Marcius was in doubt, not knowing what to say. Sarah, looking at her, wondered if she could convince her at least a little. Sarah mentally thought that she, of course, understands Marcius's shock, because she herself had the same thing. Sarah closed her eyes, remembering Wisteria and thinking that 20 years had passed too quickly. In her memories, little Sarah held Wisteria's hand and asked her if she was going far, to which Wisteria agreed. Wisteria, before leaving, asked Sarah not to cry when she saw her off, because they would definitely meet again. Wisteria was a substitute for Sarah's long-dead mother, as if she were an older sister. Sarah always admired Wisteria and found her an example to follow. She couldn't believe that Wisteria lived here. Suddenly, the door opened behind them and Sarah recognized Val. Val shaved and apologized for taking so long in front of Sarah. Sarah admired his beauty without a beard. Sarah confusedly told Val that he had finally come and why he had shaved, to which Val asked uncomprehendingly what the problem was. Then Sarah replied that it was bad for the heart. Marcius, on the other hand, was very surprised to see Val. Marcius said out loud without thinking that this ugly barbarian had turned into such a handsome man. Sarah looked at Marcius with displeasure, asking her not to say that. Sarah informed Marcius that Val was 5 years younger than her, which surprised Marcius a lot because she was 23 years old. Marcius didn't believe it, despairing, but Val said the truth was the truth. Val also added that he didn't care what Marcius thought of him, after which he turned to Sarah. Sarah looked at him expectantly. Then Val said with a smile that he had called his mother and he had told her that he would arrange a meeting for them, to which Sarah excitedly asked if it was true. Val replied that they lived nearby. Then Val turned to the door and called his mom, asking her to come home. Sarah looked expectantly at the approaching figure, and Marcius watched with expectation as the woman approached them. Val's mom approached them and said that she was glad to welcome them, calling them respected wards. Marcius wondered what it felt like. Sarah, looking at Val's mother, thought that this was a woman at whose feet even the most senior people fell, the epitome of an ideal knight. Wisteria, stopping in front of them, said seriously that she had heard about the exploits of the commander of the first night squad, Serafina de Lavillant. Sarah thought confusedly that the sister Nia she knew wouldn't talk like that, and why was she acting like that? After that, Wisteria smiled, saying that the performance was over and cheerfully asking Sarah about it. Val turned to his mom, saying that she had gone too far. Trembling with happiness, Sarah stammered that it was a speech and that this voice reminded her of her little sister Nia. Wisteria happily agreed, confirming. Wisteria hugged Sarah with a smile, saying how she hadn't seen her for a long time. Wisteria wanted to meet Sarah as soon as possible, but her son forbade and talked. Sarah, clinging to Wisteria's chest, thought that this behavior was exactly like Nia's sister's. Wisteria continued to say Val's words that she wouldn't leave Sarah alone, but she missed her so much. Wisteria hugged Sarah from behind and said admiringly that she had a beautiful body, to which Sarah was very embarrassed. Sarah remembered that Wisteria had always been like this. Wisteria refused a marriage proposal at the age of 14, became a knight of the kingdom of Ildren, and then began to build her career. Wisteria defeated many enemies, was the strongest knight girl. For her incredible exploits, she earned the nickname Night Princess. In Wisteria's arms, Sarah cursed inwardly, embarrassed, wondering how she became a knight with such a character. At this time, Val called Wisteria, stopping her. Val awkwardly told his mother not to torture Sarah because she didn't like it. Wisteria asked him to be quiet. Wisteria said she hadn't seen Sarah in 20 years and give her a chance to hug her. What's the problem? Val replied awkwardly and confusedly that it didn't matter if there was a problem or not. Then Wisteria asked Val if he had gone far with Sarah, to which Val replied that they were only engaged. After that, Wisteria laughed, asking if that was all, and asked not to disappoint her mother, which made Val very embarrassed and angry. After that, Wisteria turned to Sarah, asking if they really hadn't had this yet, to which Sarah replied sheepishly that she would always remain innocent in body and soul. Wisteria laughed, telling Val that he was already henpecked, to which Val replied that he just cherishes the sulfur. Wisteria called her son a fool and said that she needed to have children as soon as possible. Val asked his mother to stop talking like that. Looking at all this, Marias was stunned and did not understand anything. Marias awkwardly turned to Wisteria, asking if she was really Lady Wisteria, to which Wisteria herself asked her who she was and thought about it, remembering her. Remembering, Wisteria asked Marias that she was the girl from those places associated with religious things, then asked her not to interfere. Marias desperately asked not to distort the religion and the name. Wisteria said with a slight smile that she didn't care because history didn't matter here, which made Marias sad, not knowing how to respond to Wisteria's words. Wisteria looked at Sarah, calling her by name, and asked her if she had taken off the collar Val had put on her. Sarah looked at her in surprise, and Marias looked at them uncomprehendingly. Sarah touched Soy's collar and said that there was no lock in it, to which Wisteria simply smiled and asked her to take it off, increasing the strength of her desire. After that, Sarah grabbed her collar with both hands and tried to take it off, mentally ordering the collar to come off. The collar around her neck immediately began to evaporate, disappearing before her eyes. Sarah was surprised, saying that it means that's how it was, to which Wisteria agreed affirmatively. Wisteria said that if there are such magical items, then it's not surprising if there is one that grants a wish. Wisteria smiled, adding that it was such a collar, to which Sarah, having understood everything, said that she understood. Afterwards, Wisteria turned to her son and said that she was happy for him, and could she congratulate him, to which Val pulled her away with displeasure. Wisteria told Val that Saria was not against marriage. Sarah, having voiced Wisteria's words and understood their meaning, was very embarrassed, asking what kind of object it was, meaning the collar. Sarah excitedly asked if it wasn't an ordinary collar, to which Wisteria awkwardly replied that she didn't know how to say it. Then she added that the collar would be lost if it was on her arm or leg, which Sarah agreed with. Wisteria explained that this meant that they were making concessions to them, and there had never been mixed families here before. Women simply fell in love, and the child was raised by everyone who wanted to. To which Sarah mentally thought about what kind of nonsense this was. Wisteria said that several hundred years ago, Easterners settled in the forest. Their number grew, everything happened, including falling in love between Westerners and Easterners. Their blood mixed and mestizos were born. Everyone on this earth except elves is mestizo. There are no people here who didn't have a particle of Ildren in their blood. Sarah looked at Wisteria in surprise after hearing this. Wisteria turned to Sarah, saying that no one would blame her for anything. Sarah guiltily turned to Wisteria, saying that he always thought differently, to which Wisteria asked Sarah not to scold herself for this. Wisteria put her hands on Sarah's shoulder and asked her to listen to her, because Sarah always did everything for others. But how can she make someone happy if she herself is unhappy? Sarah looked at her thoughtfully, understanding the meaning of the words and thinking about what happiness meant to her. Wisteria suddenly told Sarah that she wasn't saying that she should definitely marry Val, but if she didn't hate him, then go ahead. Wisteria continued by saying that she was tired of seeing Val alone, although if Sarah didn't like it, she could break up with him and still just... Sarah sat thoughtfully, not knowing what to say. At this time, Marius wanted to give advice to Sarah so that she would not obey them, but Cecilia closed her mouth before she could finish. Sarah was wondering if she could do that, or rather if she had the right, because she didn't think it was a terrible thing to do. When Sarah came to her senses, she awkwardly replied that she couldn't say it right away. Afterwards, Wisteria asked Sarah how she lost to Val by hugging her more. Wisteria then asked Sarah to put on a collar if she didn't mind. Then, taking the collar, Sarah asked if she could put it on as well as she took it off, to which Wisteria replied that it wasn't that simple, and Val should actually do it. Val was very embarrassed by his mother's words at that time. After that, Val complained to his mother that he felt like she was making all the decisions for him, to which Wisteria asked what was wrong, which made Val unhappy, Between them, Sarah begged them to stop. Unable to argue with his mother, Val covered his face with his hands, exhaling from exhaustion, to which Wisteria jokingly asked him not to cry, which made Val ask her to shut up. Exhaling and lifting his head, Val turned to Sarah, asking if he could put a collar on her, to which Sarah calmly agreed, handing him the collar. Taking the collar, Val said with a smile that he was very pleased with her words. After that, Val began to turn to the god of thunder, asking him not to expose his chosen one to his deadly rumble of his feelings for her. Val swore that he would hold them back and protect them no matter what. Putting a collar on Sarah, Val asked God not to touch her innocent soul, or else he would turn into the devil. He would give his life for her. Val looked at the reddened Sarah and asked her what seemed to confuse her, to which Sarah thought that it was beyond her imagination. Wisteria was happy, saying that they looked just perfect. Then she turned to Kichi, saying that if she continued to stand like that, then Marcia's would have to treat her. Sarah went outside and stretched her body. She told her thoughts out loud that she was glad to meet her sister Nia again, but it was amazing that she was Val's mom. Then Sarah awkwardly touched her collar and thought in disbelief that she would have to control her emotions from now on, because she might accidentally take it off. Then Sarah remembered how it was back home. Everyone was saying the same thing about getting married. In Sarah's memoirs, her family said that the duty of a knight is important, of course, but do not forget about the main role of bringing them offspring. Her teacher had cried in the past, telling her to realize that she was a girl first and foremost, and she was over 20 years old. Various knights approached her, telling her in the past that they had heard that she was a magnificent knight, but they could not even think that she was so charming, because it was impossible to combine these two of her opposites. The same knight had asked Sarah to marry him in the past, as he could promise her a carefree life by relieving her of her duties as a knight. In the end, Sarah defeated this knight in battle. Sarah said out loud that in fact, that knight's family was so conservative, she didn't suit him at all, and he also brazenly asked her to marry him. At this time, Val appeared from behind, calling Sarah by name. Val asked Sarah with a smile if she was ready and if something had happened. Sarah, looking at Val's beautiful face, thought about what she was going through because Val was too handsome. Sarah thought shyly that Val valued her not only for her looks, but also for her abilities, 8 years younger than her and so good. Sarah blushed, averting her gaze and asking herself what kind of feeling it was, as if she was shy and something at the same time. At that time, Wisteria came up to them and told Sarah that she knew what that feeling was. Hugging Sarah tightly, Wisteria said that it was a woman's heart, which made Sarah even more embarrassed under the pressure of the hug. Sarah, displeased, asked Wisteria if she could read her mind, to which Wisteria laughed, saying that she guessed right, and replied to Sarah that, in fact, everything was written on her face. Sarah clicked her tongue in displeasure and asked Wisteria not to sneak up on her, which made Wisteria laugh even more and joke about where to go. Sometime later, Sarah, walking forward, confusedly asked Wisteria what kind of person she was, then turned to Val, asking if she was always like this, to which Val replied that mostly yes. Val added with a smile that Wisteria was more cheerful than usual, and he was wondering how people who meet after 20 years feel because they probably missed each other very much. To which Sarah thoughtfully agreed and said that 20 years ago she was only 6 years old. Wisteria, watching them, asked with interest that they had already started talking about age. After that, Kichi called Wisteria, drawing her attention to herself, and asked her how much longer she would pursue them. Wisteria exhaled awkwardly, not knowing what to say. Wisteria then replied that she was just supporting them, to which Chichi replied that she was completely the opposite. Wisteria, Tsitsi, and Marias followed Val and Sarah. All of them arrived in the village of Ozernoye. Looking around, Sarah happily said that she had not been here for several days, and that time had happened by chance that they came here, which Val agreed with, saying that it was hard. Wisteria joined them, saying that it was quite lively here right now, and she was wondering what people were talking about there. Then, pointing at the crowd of people in the city, Wisteria told Sarah that she was their hero. Sarah, not understanding, looked at the crowd of people who greeted her joyfully, shouting her name. Sarah was very surprised by the joyful children approaching, asking what was going on and what kind of crowd of children it was. Wisteria smiled, telling Sarah that she was so popular and how quickly the rumors spread. Sarah, on the other hand, asked in surprise why the children were behaving like that. Wisteria replied to Sarah that this is a place where warriors hunt dragons, and it is natural that children admire such people. Looking at the joyful children, Sarah smiled, understanding everything. There are men and women and children here. Everyone appreciates warriors, and that's why even if Sarah is a knight, she won't be looked at askance. As she walked on, Sarah heard her girlfriend from the bathhouse calling Thunder's wife. The girl smiled, asking Sarah how many days they had not seen each other. Noticing Sarah's reddened face, the girl asked her if something had happened, to which Sarah replied with embarrassment that she hadn't gotten used to being called that yet. After that, everyone fell silent for a bit. Then the girl who met them all understood. The girl said with a smile that she understood everything, and officially they were already husband and wife. But Sarah interrupted her, denying it and saying that she was just embarrassed. The girl was happy and said she would tell all the other residents, and others were also happy that there would be new rumors. Sarah was very surprised. The girl bowed, saying that she declined, but Sarah didn't have time to stop her. After that, Sarah heard a man's voice apologizing for the girl's behavior. The warrior who had been standing next to him all the time awkwardly replied that it was all Sarah's doing. Val greeted the warrior joyfully, calling him twofold. Sarah asked Val that this was the same Sarah. After realizing this, Sarah asked Sarah that she had saved his little sister back then, to which Sarah agreed, saying that she was now in debt to her for life, and he himself would sincerely thank her. When Marias saw Sarah, he asked Sarah in surprise that she had saved the girl who had started fighting with Val, to which Marias got angry, asking that she was a fool. Wisteria agreed with Sir that Marias was a fool. Val seriously said that Marias wasn't worth it, and Kichi looked at Marias mockingly. After hearing this, Marius blushed with shame and began to whimper. Everyone was embarrassed by Marcius's reaction. Sarah just smiled, understanding everything. Sarah changed the subject by saying that the situation in the forest had changed a lot, which meant that they had already performed the ritual, and he had nothing to say in that case. Sarah thought about the ritual in surprise. After that, Sarah, leaving them, said goodbye that today was a holiday, and invited Sarah to join, since this holiday was for her, and Justice called him. All the villagers celebrated the holiday, drank and talked with each other. Some were playing musical instruments and just having fun, and the celebration lasted until the evening. In the evening, all the residents gathered on the shore of the lake watching a large bonfire with a monster's skull burning. One of the residents sat near this campfire and said various prayers while worshipping. Sarah, looking at the monster's skull, thought that this was not a mistake, because she had killed him this morning and life had been stopped with the help of several dozen warriors. The monster was quickly stripped of its skin and meat and cleaned in the best possible way. But even after death nobly, without leaving fat and small bones, the monster's meat will become blood for people and a source of life. Sarah has not been here much, but she has already managed to understand this feeling of gratitude by saying bon appetit. Sarah stared at the fried meat in fascination and took a bite with pleasure. Chewing on the meat, Sarah thought it was so delicious, and the mollis berry was so delicious. Val offered Sarah more meat, telling her to try it because it was meat with sauce. Sarah looked at the meat admiringly and took a bite. After tasting the meat with the sauce, Sarah thought that the meat was so tender, and she couldn't even think that it was that tender. Val smilingly informed Sarah that the monster's body parts were different and could be sold for good money, to which Sarah was surprised, saying that it had great value. Marcius was watching them with displeasure, and Kichi was interested. Val cheerfully said that the other dragons were also quite useful when it came to materials, but they were still incredible, which Sarah agreed with. Suddenly, Wisteria clung to Sarah, cheerfully saying that she was having fun here, which made Sarah a little embarrassed. After that, Wisteria poured liquid into a cup and asked Sarah to take a look. Pointing to the cup of liquid, Wisteria explained that it was sake made by the local elves, made from grain for brewing, and it was very tasty. Wisteria suggested that Sarah wash down the meat with it, and she would not regret it and would get drunk. Sarah was embarrassed when she heard that word. Marcias and Chi-Chi watched as Wisteria offered Sarah a drink of it. Sarah was holding both meat and sake in her hands, after which, exhaling, Sarah took a bite of the meat and, looking at the sake with fright, drank it in one gulp. Sarah felt blissful, feeling alive, and continued to eat. Marcius, looking at the intoxicated Sarah, said with fright that it was the first time she had seen such a face of Sarah. Kichi also assumed that there was something else mixed in the sake of sulfur. Kiki then offered a piece of meat to Marius, asking if she would, to which Marcius excitedly refused, saying that she would not. But then she fell silent, looking at the delicious meat and thinking. Marcius looked away, refusing completely, to which Kichi called her stubborn, because Marcius was hungry and hadn't eaten since yesterday. Then Kichi calmly said that there was nothing wrong with Marcius wanting to eat, even though she was not a fan of religious things. Marcius was surprised by what Kichi wanted to say, but Chi-Chi shoved a piece of meat at her and changed the subject. What does it all mean to eat? Marcius was burned by the hot meat. Chi-Chi took a plate of meat and told Marcius to eat better, as her mistress's spoils were an honor to her. Marcius suddenly took a bite of the meat after tasting it and said it was delicious. Marcius recalled how this monster had destroyed 2 of her soldiers, but she continued to eat, tearfully saying that they were dead. Marcius wiped her tears, saying that all the knights had died and it was all her fault. Marcius sadly said that she was sure that she would succeed, but she was the only one who survived. To which Kiki, looking at Marcius, seriously said that she was really stupid. Chi-Chi said that everyone who died was prepared for such a fate when they decided to become knights, and they could not be returned. One should be glad that she survived. At that time, Val called the drunk Sarah several times, waking her up, after which Sarah, waking up, asked in surprise what was wrong, to which Val replied that he was sure it was all his mother's sake. When Sarah came to her senses, she asked Val if he had any conversation with her, to which Val agreed, saying that he meant about the plans for tomorrow. Looking at the sky, Val said that all the tribes were joining together to perform a purification ritual, and he would reveal to her part of the secret that this land holds. Sulfur was underwater. Opening her eyes, she thought about why she was here. Then, noticing a small light, she swam in that direction, thinking about what kind of light it was. Suddenly, in the distance, she saw a large black fish and was surprised by it. There were a lot of eyes on the fish's body, and Sarah recognized it as a dragon. Meanwhile, the dragon was trying to talk to Sarah, but suddenly Sarah opened her eyes and abruptly sat down in her seat, shouting for them to stop. Sarah looked around the room and realized in surprise that it was just a dream. Sarah held her head and thought about why the dragon spoke to her, and maybe she dreamed about the Molly's berry she ate yesterday. At that time, Sarah heard someone's voice, which screamed in pain, and looking in that direction, she was very scared when she saw how she pressed the bookmaker to the ground. Hearing the cries of excitement, Nyla came into their room, greeting Sarah with a good morning. Nyla informed Sarah that today was a very important day, to which Sarah, seeing a lot of fairies around, replied that she had noticed it. Sometime later, Sarah, already dressed in casual clothes and collecting her hair, thought that it was a strange dream. Sarah said out loud that she might be winding herself up, and there were a lot of elves today. Picking up her hair, Sarah noticed that she had already forgotten her dream and could not remember. She wondered if it should be like this. Sometime later, elves, dwarves, and fairies were walking through the forest, and Val and Sarah were walking with them. One of the dwarf sages rejoiced that the stagnation had been eliminated so quickly this time, and now they would have time to prepare for the ritual. The second of the wise men added that Val and his fiancée had saved them from trouble and thanked them. Sarah, feeling better, said that it had only been one day, to which Boufmek proudly said that she had done her best. At this time, Val turned to Sarah, informing her that on the day of the battle with the monster, she collided head-on with Marcius and lost consciousness. Sarah was surprised, asking if it was true. After that, Sarah, moving away from drunkenness, asked everyone who could withstand such strong alcohol, to which Val smiled and replied that she hadn't gotten used to it yet. The bookmaker, standing on Sarah's head, said with a smile that while Sarah was sleeping, they circled over her all night and looked after her. Sarah pretended to apologize, saying that she was tired, to which Buffmake forgave her this time. Val then turned to Sarah, telling her to keep in mind next time that elves don't feel hungry or tired. After that, Val asked the bookmaker not to complain to him, to which Buffmake said with displeasure that they were still living beings and had respect for them. After all, she was an elf. At that time, Marcius was following everyone and was very shocked. She looked around and thought about elves from fairy tales, about low dwarves and incomprehensibly moving plants, and also about annoying fairies sitting on their heads. Marcius thought wearily about why she was involved in this case too. After watching Marcius, Chi-Chi told her that it was written all over her face, to which Marcius clicked her tongue in displeasure. Chi-Chi tiredly said that she would not have let Marcius either, but Lady Wisteria told Marcius to go instead, to which Marcius replied with displeasure that she had said it on purpose. Picking up the fairy that was sitting on her head, Marcius said that she couldn't recognize such creatures anyway. Then Chi-Chi replied with displeasure that today she realized that Marcius had a very bad temper. Chi-Chi calmly explained that nature is a phenomenon, it is inevitable, and it does not happen that there is only what people recognize. Then she added that if Marcia sees something now, then maybe her opinion will change. Suddenly, Marcius was looking after Val and Sarah when she noticed that everything was beginning to light up before her eyes, which surprised her, wondering. Marcius looked around and asked Kichi what the white dust was. At this time, Sarah, also looking around in surprise, thought that the place where they fought had turned to dust. Then Val explained to Sarah that this is the influence of stagnation, because this creature also has a soul, and it leaves traces. Sarah was still looking ahead in surprise, thinking about how much. Val told Sarah that she manifests herself in her own way, and that's the main difference. Val told Sarah that everyone has the same life, and stagnation becomes dust, and that's exactly what teacher Carlo Roth told him. Sarah greeted the elf Kark with her mouth, saying that she couldn't remember anymore. Karkar smiled kindly at her and said that he would continue, after which he asked Vala for the item that was causing all this fuss. Val calmly handed him the book. Noticing the book, Marcias was very surprised and shouted to Val that it was hers and he had to return it to her. But Marcias stopped Kichi, asking her to stop. At this time, Karko was examining the book and thinking a little. After studying the book, Karko closed the book and exhaled, saying that he could only attack with fire and nothing like that. To which Val also exhaled in a relaxed manner, saying that he thought so. But Sarah was surprised, not understanding how it all happened. Sarah said she thought it was something dangerous yesterday, to which Karka replied that Marcias had used the blessing of the earth, which was why the destructive force was so powerful. Then Karka smiled and said that everything had ended well, and now it would be noon soon and the weather was so good, great for the awakening of the earth. Carlo Roth, a healer of the forest dwellers, says that this ritual, which excites the catalysts of fire, water, earth, and wind brought by different clans, reminds them of its existence. Val stood in front of a large pentagram that was painted on the ground and said that forgiveness in the name of the spirit, they would conduct a ritual. At this time, Karkarmouth, closing his eyes and concentrating, began to recite a strange spell. Sarah, listening to the spell and watching the elf, thought that these words were so strange, and they echoed in her head. As Sarah found out later, it was an ancient prayer from thousands of years ago. Val stood right in front of the pentagram and menacingly uttered a spell in which he said that he would expel disaster and let stagnation flow and let all the guilty be cleansed by saying the prayer of purification. Then Val took out his long iron sword and stabbed it straight to the ground, after which everything began to shine and white dust began to rise, creating a blizzard. Sarah, Marcius, and Kichi covered their faces to cover themselves and stared in surprise as the white dust swirled around Val and gathered into a small ball of light. This small ball, having gathered all the dust, exploded, causing the white dust to disappear. Val took off his helmet, smiled, and said that was about it, after which he turned to Sarah, asking her for her opinion. The earth and nature, from which man takes away all living things, but people still pay homage and ask for forgiveness for their sins. Sarah began to cry, realizing this thought, and Val, frightened, asked her why she was crying. Sometime later, Sarah planted a small appendage and straightened up, wiping sweat from her forehead. She exhaled wearily and happily said that it was finally the 30th, and she didn't think she would be doing plants, but it wasn't bad at all. Looking at the others, who were also planting shoots all over the area, Sarah thought that she had no idea at all that after the ritual, they would be doing just that. At that time, Val approached Sarah, saying that she had an unusual face, to which Sarah happily greeted her and replied that this was an unusual job for her. After that, Val smiled and said that he really thought so. Val asked Sarah to imagine that if they don't do this, it will be difficult and not good for their descendants to live in a way that is comfortable only for them, and it is the lack of proper care that creates stagnation and this phenomenon of selfishness. Karka explained that the earth, sensing the negative aura of a person, would bite, and she decided to absorb the aura in order to increase her power, thereby sucking out part of the victim's soul and memory, as it usually happens. To which Sarah felt disgusted. Sarah awkwardly asked that it was a lot of damage, to which Karka exhaled and replied that a person's character changes a lot, and so does his memory. Sarah was surprised to hear the word character. Karka explained that Marcias had saved the earth, so the consequences weren't that terrible, and there probably wasn't anything left after the cleansing ritual. Sarah immediately understood Kark's words. Then Val offered to ask Marcias personally and called her by name, to which Marcias responded rudely to her name. Then Val asked Marcias what her parents called her. to which Marcius asked with displeasure why he needed it, and said that 7 years ago, when she became a chaplain, the captain gave her a nickname instead of his last name. After that, Marcius couldn't remember the nickname, replaying everything in her head. Suddenly surprised, she asked aloud what her name was at the orphanage, and said that she had definitely become a chaplain at the age of 16, or not. Marcius was torn between answers, trying to remember her past. Thus, the chaplain of the first Marcius night squad, Alice Marcius, lost most of her memory, to which Sarah thought wearily about what she should do now. A purification ritual is being performed to eradicate all the evil spirits of stagnation, and it has become clear that Marcius has partially lost her memory. Marcius, detached from everyone, sat in a corner and mumbled thoughtfully about what happened when she was 7 and 16, trying to recall her memory. Looking at Marcius, Sarah, worried, said what was happening to her, and turning to Marcius, she said that her head would hurt so much. Sarah sadly said that Marcius had completely drooped, to which Kichi supported her and asked if she thought Marcius was causing too much trouble. Chichi explained that it was probably for the best that Marcius had forgotten something, to which Marcius, having heard their conversation, replied to Chichi that it was a sin. Then Marcius gathered herself and viciously asked Kichi what she was saying, to which Kichi calmly replied that this was Marcius's sick childhood. Then she asked Marcius to remember at least something, and quickly, to which Marcius, even more angry and cursing, verbally attacked Kichi, saying that she did not understand anything. Kichi also argued with her, saying that she wasn't much of a problem. Sarah watched tiredly and thought that they had a strange relationship. Chichi had already climbed onto Marcius by this time, fighting with her and asking her to turn on her head, to which Marcius actively fought, saying that it was all because of them. Sarah, looking at them, asked aloud if it was possible to stop them. Marcius and Kichi fought each other without giving in to each other. After that, Marcius suddenly pushed Kichi away from her and sat right on top of her, angrily told her not to talk nonsense and not to forget this, to which Kichi screamed in pain. Marcius desperately said that of course there were times when it wasn't easy for her, but she didn't think it was better to lose her memory. After that, Marcius recalled all the recent conversations with Kichi and, realizing everything, excitedly called Sarah to inform her that she might not have noticed, but Kichi used to live in the same place. But before Marcius could finish, Chichi bit Marcius sharply on her finger, causing Marcius to scream loudly in pain. Sarah was surprised that Chichi had been bitten by Marcius. Marcius stared in shock at Kichi, who was still holding her hands in her teeth. Marcius then pushed Kichi aside to free her hand. Chichi released her hand, abruptly stood behind her and grabbed Marcius's neck with her hand, pressing her to herself. Marcius got angry, calling Chichi a barbarian, and Sarah was embarrassed to watch their fight. A few moments later, Marcius lost consciousness from suffocation, after which Kichi released her, proudly raising her head and winning the fight in 2 minutes and 37 seconds. Sarah was shocked to say that they had a winner. After that, Sarah asked Chichi that she understood everything, that Marcius had started at first, but whether she had overdone it. To which Chichi calmly replied that Marcius was the kind of person who couldn't be stopped otherwise. Sarah couldn't help but agree. Chichi told Sarah that she must have heard what Marcius wanted to say. After that, Chichi said that she really came from Ildren and was one of those recruited. Sarah listened to her sadly. Chichi said that she was an ordinary resident and did not have any special abilities, and it so happened that she was no longer a citizen of Ildren but a servant of Mr. Val on this earth. Chichi added that he served Sarah on the orders of her sworn older sister and asked him not to look at her as if she were still a resident of Ildren, to which Sarah replied that she would try. Sarah then turned to Kichi, who responded by asking what was wrong. Sarah asked if she had any happy memories of Ildren. Chichi fell silent, looking at Sarah and thinking. Chichi turned away, saying that she didn't remember much and didn't care because she would never return there. Some time later, Marcius stood on the street and sadly said that she had lost to the barbarian and was a disgrace to her reputation as the chaplain of the first squad. Sarah said in a supportive way that she understood her, but she had lost her memory, which Marcius agreed with. Chichi calmly said that if it wasn't for her, Marcius would have been broken until her death. Marcius then got angry at Chichi, asking her what she had said. Sarah nervously thought about how it would really happen again. Marcius clicked her tongue in displeasure. After that, she spitefully said why she should be grateful to Kiki, because she was only hanging out with her because she was Mistress Serafina's maid. But Kiki calmly replied to her that she was pissing her off and stinking. After Kichi's words, Marcius looked at Kichi irritably, asking her what she meant. Sarah was concerned about the conflict situation. Marcius completely turned to Kiki, asking angrily what Kiki said that she stinks, to which Kiki awkwardly replied that she herself would not have noticed. Kiki covered her nose with her hand and said that she smelled of sweat and blood, and asked Marcius how long it had been since she had washed, to which Marcius was viciously embarrassed, not knowing what to say. Then Marcius mentally asked herself how much time she had been spending here already. After that, Marcius said out loud that she had been here for 3 weeks. After an awkward silence, Sarah called Marcius by name. After that, Sarah awkwardly said that she understood the whole situation, so it was necessary to solve it. Maria's, covering her face in shame, agreed with Sarah. Sometime later, all 3 of them were already near the lake, and Sarah said that they, too, had managed to sweat in 3 weeks. After that, all the girls undressed, gathering their hair. Sarah grabbed her sword, saying that she would take it just in case, to which Chichi replied that she didn't think it would be needed. Kichi said that Bal's men were guarding their territory, so the dragons wouldn't come through. Marcius also said that she was sure that Chichi would specifically choose a place where everything was possible. Kichi informed Sarah and Marcius that the other places were all dragon nests, to which Marcius sadly said she wanted to go home. Going into the water, Sarah apologized to Marcius, saying that she was not going to leave these lands yet and wanted to live here for a while. She also advised Marcius not to return, which Marcius awkwardly agreed with her. Marcius wiped her body with a sponge, washing off all the dirt. Chichi was leaning against a rock, enjoying the water, and Sarah was studying the water, noticing the fish there. Suddenly, Sarah grabbed her sword and pointed it straight into the water to catch the fish. Kichi and Marcius were scared by Sarah's action. Then Sarah turned to them with a smile, showing her caught fish. Sometime later, the girls fried fish and admired their dinner. Sitting next to the campfire, Marcius talked about how warm it was. Sarah agreed with her, and Chichi said that the people around her were also taking care not to be attacked by Tsukubaikshi, to which the other girls asked Kichi about them in surprise. Kiki explained that these are dragons that look like birds that fly to a lit bonfire in the forest, which scared Marcius, imagining a dragon. Sarah asked Marcius if she remembered, but Chichi said it was more important that their fish was cooked. The 3 girls took the cooked fish and began to have dinner. Sometime later, they ate all the fish. After that, they sat next to the campfire, resting. Sarah looked up at the sky and saw a flying bird there, and thought that she had not rested like this for a long time, and perhaps since she became a captain in the squad, maybe earlier. The sun was already setting below the horizon, and all the girls were already dressed in their clothes. Sarah happily said that she felt so good, while Chi-Chi was glad that she had finally washed her clothes. Kiki then informed them that Mr. Val would be back from the meeting soon and suggested that everyone prepare dinner, which Sarah agreed with. Chi-Chi taught the girls how to collect healthy, edible herbs. After that, they gathered everything they needed in their baskets and headed home. On the way home, Marcius turned to Sarah, saying that she was wrong about her. Sarah looked at her in surprise, and then Marciasi said that she had not seen her like this in all her time in the service, for such a noble knight to do the usual things for life. To which Sarah simply smiled and, approaching the house, she replied that in such a cozy atmosphere, you forget all military matters. Marcius and Kichi looked at Sarah in surprise, who laughed sincerely and said that she was also a human being, and invited the girls with her. Val was walking home from a long journey, and when he saw his house from afar, he said out loud that he was late. Looking at his house, Val felt the smell coming from the house. Closing his eyes and sniffing, Val thought that they had fried fish with salt, herbal soup, and dragon meat for dinner, although he still can't forget the taste of that Molly'sberry. Sometime later, Val approached his house and heard the voice of Sarah, who was glad that he had finally come. Sarah met him in front of the entrance and greeted him. Sarah told him with a smile that dinner was ready, to which Val looked at her admiringly. Sarah approached Val, saying that she was only helping and that Tsitsi and Marcius were mostly working. Then Sarah noticed him asking something about this thing, but Val asked her if anything good had happened, to which Sarah replied that there was nothing. Then she added, saying that she had only revised her views, to which Val looked at her lovingly. Sarah looked at him questioningly, asking what kind of face he had, to which Val was embarrassed, saying that it was nothing and that he would just come back. Watching them with interest, Kichi asked if they were just engaged. Marcius thought uncomfortably that Sarah had really changed. One day passed. then the second and the third as Marcius always walked by their side. Marcius awkwardly wondered if Sarah was getting too used to this place. Marcius then called Sarah, who asked what was wrong. Marcius reminded her of her words that she would return to Ildren, then asked if it was okay for Sarah to wear this ring around her neck. Sarah was embarrassed and turned away, thinking that she had a bad feeling about this. Then Marcius irritably reminded her that she had said that there would be no real marriage, to which Sarah replied sheepishly that her sister Nia had said something else. After that, Marcius, displeased and loudly asked Sarah that she was going to listen to the barbarian who betrayed their lands. Marcius panted heavily after her angry words. Sarah asked Marcius not to worry about it, and with an uncertain look she said that she would not forget her duty to the motherland, to which Marcius thought that Sarah was not at all sure about this. Sarah awkwardly said that, as her sister Nia said, she wanted to find her happiness and therefore often thinks about it. Then Marcius asked her if such a solution would be suitable in her position, to which Sarah replied even more uncertainly that she understood everything. Sarah covered her face and plaintively said that she understood everything, but for some reason she couldn't get the concept of happiness out of her head, to which Marcius uncomprehendingly asked what she was talking about. After that, Marcius awkwardly said that Sarah, who was nicknamed Ice Avalanche among the knights, was not suitable for life in the village at all. Sarah said in dismay that Marcius might be right, but she was a little bit wrong. Sarah said that in the past, she only knew battles, as a knight and a good leader, doing everything for the good of Ildren, and she had been doing so since childhood. At this time, everyone looked at Sarah in surprise. Sarah added that maybe Marcius was just overestimating her, and she wasn't saying it was a bad thing, but living here, studying the culture and people, Sarah realized that even though she was a knight in the East, here she was just an invader. Marcius was surprised. Sarah also said that she did not regret fighting for her homeland for all 7 years because it was the right thing for her, but she could not even imagine that the locals would not blame her. Marcius replied to Sarah that she was going to trade her homeland for this village because of her guilt towards the locals. Sarah thought of the desolate and pale green Ildren homeland. She had served this land for 7 years, but now it turned out that she had left it. Then Sarah hesitantly said that the homeland was here. No matter how you look at it, with both options, the way out was not the best. Kiki suddenly reproached Val for not eavesdropping, to which she herself was reproached for this. Sarah added that it's not so easy to accept, even if the locals don't blame her, and of course she had an experience when she was very offended. Then Kiki intervened, asking them why they were bothering so much. Chi-Chi firmly said that it didn't matter if it was her homeland or a new place. Sarah had this ring around her neck. After that, Marcius and Sarah looked at each other awkwardly. Kiki reminded them that they themselves know that it can be removed at any time, but to think about it without removing the ring, it also says something. Afterward, Kiki said she was hungry and cooking was the most important thing to her. In the evening, everyone sat at home and had dinner quietly. Sarah, looking at the food, thought again that the food tasted better here. Sarah thought about the huge creatures that live in good conditions and the forest where dragons live, with which you can feed 100 people. After that, Sarah thought that their forests were very deep and the mountains were dangerous and it was very difficult to plow a field. If they don't cut down forests, then people will have nothing to feed because there will be no wheat, and if they cut down, then all the beauty will disappear. More than 700 years have passed since the land began to be taken away, and the map in the east shows that it should have more fertile lands. Sarah thought that there wasn't enough land because it was drying up all over. Suddenly, someone started calling Sarah, after which she gathered her thoughts. Val told Sarah that he thought she was thinking because she looked like a squirrel, to which Sarah choked, surprised by this comparison. Sarah slapped her chest, then Marcius handed her water, which she immediately drank. Sarah thanked Marcius and said that she hadn't noticed how she was in the clouds. Val asked her if she was okay, to which Sarah replied that everything was fine. Then Val asked her what she was thinking about, to which Sarah replied, thinking a little, that she was thinking what she should do in the person of an aristocrat and a knight, and that they were taking away their lands to feed their people. Sarah thought sadly that she couldn't say right now that she was absolutely right, but still, people were holding their anger because of this enmity. After that, Val called Sarah and invited her to talk after dinner. Going outside, Sarah looked at the sky and said that the sky was very beautiful in the east and west. Val agreed with her. Sarah then started the topic by saying she didn't know what to do. Sarah replied that she had 2 options, to stay here for the sake of happiness or to return to her homeland. Then Val, after a little thought, suggested that Sarah fantasize a little. Sarah was surprised. Sarah said it was unusual to hear Val say that, to which Val replied that, on the contrary, if something concerns imagination, then he is the biggest visionary. Then Val gave an example about perfumes and said that in magic, a strong desire helps to achieve results, unlike delusion, which brings only regret. After that, he invited Sarah to think about her future. Sarah closed her eyes and thought that she had achieved something and was returning to her homeland. She wanted to be rewarded with something and recorded in history. Sarah thought that this would be the end of her career, and she, remaining an aristocrat, would die, spending her life in a castle. The more she thought about it, the darker her thoughts became, and she assumed that this would be the case if she chose her homeland. But if Sarah stays here and marries Val, who was much better than her and had Ildren's shelter, and, if this continues, she will bear children to him. These thoughts made Sarah dizzy with embarrassment, and she told herself that she had overdone it a little. Seeing her doubts, Val said that she still had doubts. Val said with a smile that he thought Sarah didn't care about him, so she would decide faster, but he was glad that Sarah was thinking about it and it meant that she cared about him. Val asked Sarah if he could feel that way. Sarah was embarrassed, and Val smiled, saying that he was happy. Sarah pouted, saying that Val's words made her doubt, to which Val replied that these were her problems. His task was to be by her side. Val then added that he wanted Sarah to see a lot more, which meant it was time for them to hit the road. Meanwhile, in the kingdom of Ildren, in the capital of Otamari, the knight quickly rode towards the capital, loudly telling the guards that he had an urgent message. The knight was allowed into the capital and sent to General Levind. The knight introduced himself to him and said that this was a report from Herbine. After that, the general let him into his office. The general told the knight that there had been a meeting recently, and he roughly understood what he had in his report, which was that Serafina had betrayed them. Then the knight said that she had been captured by barbarians, to which the general replied that it was the same thing. The general asked the knight about the army, to which the knight replied that they were significantly weakened. After the knight left, the general said out loud with displeasure that Serafina still could not understand that it was impossible to save everyone. Sarah sat on the street in front of the house and recalled her last conversation with Val. Sarah wondered where they were going. She was building up different versions of amazing places in her head. Suddenly, Val opened the window and asked Sarah if she was interested in the mining village, which made Sarah very scared and reproached him for this. Val happily said that the village was nearby and maybe she wouldn't believe it, but there was an onsen there, to which Sarah asked in surprise what it was. Surprised, Val apologized and explained that this was a kind of bathroom, only natural. Sarah's eyes immediately lit up in surprise. Sarah asked him what he looked like, to which Val replied that the water comes out on its own and heats up on its own. Sarah was very surprised. Val explained everything to Sarah, at which time Kichi laughed, saying that she was surprised every time. Marius, standing next to them, said that their fuel was so valuable that they swam in the rivers in winter. Marius said that it was all thanks to the spirits and elves, which Marcias agreed with, saying that life was easier for the barbarians, to which Kiki replied with displeasure that this was not true, because warriors survive by hunting dragons. Chichi added that there were many cases where a dragon devoured a healthy warrior. Marcias felt embarrassed by this, so Chichi reassuringly said that one day they would all die, and it was better to be eaten by a dragon than to starve. Marcias became even more nervous from such words, and she asked that they didn't have a funeral, to which Kichi replied that they were different. Suddenly, Marcias and Kichi heard Sarah's delighted voice, who was happy that Val had asked the dwarves to make her a helmet, to which Val replied that he wanted to make it safe. Sarah said she would definitely pay for the helmet, to which Val replied that a lot of money had been paid for her slain dragon, and the dwarves said they would make a better helmet. Chichi and Matthias watched Sarah being happy. Sarah asked Val when he would be ready, to which Val asked everyone to cover their ears and loudly called for a bookmaker. Sarah was very surprised by his voice. After that, the bookmaker appeared in front of them, greeting Val and all the girls. Val apologized to Bifake for the urgency, to which she was not offended, and asked how she could help. Val asked her to ask the dwarves when Sarah's helmet would be ready, to which Bufake obeyed and disappeared, fulfilling the request. Sarah was surprised by Buff Mike's visit, to which Val said that if you have a strong voice for their appeal, they will definitely help, and now only Val and his father have this. Sarah then asked if the head of the clan should resolve issues with other clans, to which Val agreed, saying that he had many responsibilities. Sarah thought that they had everything like animals, but still there was a primitive system. Then Val resolutely said that he would do everything in his power and try to improve the lives of the people as much as possible. Sarah looked at him admiringly, saying that her first impression of him was wrong, to which Val jokingly asked her if she was in love. After that, Sarah blushed and asked Val with displeasure not to say that. At that time, Boofmeek returned to them and said that Sarah's helmet would be ready by tomorrow, to which Val and Sarah were delighted, planning their trip. The next morning, Sarah was fully dressed and standing ready outside. Sarah asked Val why they were in full gear, to which Val replied that the path would be long and difficult where dragons could get caught. After that, Val pointed to a mountain in the distance, saying that the village was there. Sarah was surprised, saying that they would not get there in one day and they had to think about food and everything else. Then Val calmly said that he knew that Sarah would panic. After that, he showed a staff in his hand, saying that only a few possessed this technique. Val then twisted the staff on his arm and stuck it into the ground, saying a spell. After that, a dragon began to emerge from the ground. Val, Sarah, Chi-Chi, and Marcias sat on the dragon in surprise. The dragon flew up to the sky very quickly, and when Sarah opened her eyes, she saw how to soar in the sky and admired this view. Val asked her if she understood why she was wrong, then asked her to enjoy her time in the sky, to which Sarah replied that she understood everything, which made Val happy, and they quickly flew to the mountain ranges. The company took off into the sky on a replica of a dragon. The girl was delighted by the view from the height of the flight. She also noticed with delight the high speed of the dragon replica. The lake became very small from afar. The masked man named Val noticed the girl's enthusiastic gaze. This dragon replica technique was the pride of his warriors. The dragon replica only responded to those who defeated the dragon alone. It is customary for such warriors to have as many as 2 names. Sarah wasn't surprised by this. After all, there were knights with 2 names in Ildar too, even though the girl defeated 30 people in a simulated battle. Suddenly, she realized something. The girl, realizing something, worriedly asked the masked man about the number of knights who had this skill. Then Val informed her that, considering the entire army, there were only about 70 of them. The girl was stunned that so many people had this skill. The dragon's spear shapes were all different, but they were basically the same. Sarah then realized that one copy of the dragon could carry about 400 people, and there were as many as 70 people with this skill. The girl was shocked by this. She realized this and was a little displeased. The fact that so many people had this skill, in her opinion, was unfair. Others were shocked by her displeased cry. Val awkwardly asked the girl the reason for her loud exclamation, which made her even more unhappy because he did not realize the power of his troops. Sarah tearfully informed him that he had insulted her homeland without understanding. Val was embarrassed by this. He did not understand the reason for her displeasure. But the man apologized to Sarah anyway for hurting her with his words. Sarah, having calmed down, also apologized for snapping at him. Val understood everything. Val also noticed that the girl was showing interest. Then he told her with a smile that he wanted to know more about her. Sarah was embarrassed by his openness. Then the girl realized that she needed to explain to Val the reason for her surprise. She asked if he had ever heard of horses. The man confirmed it. Seraph said that they look like dragons, but they can't fly. Usually, one warrior rode on one horse. After hearing this, the man realized that it was very uncomfortable. The dragons were better in this regard. Their speed is faster, and they could also withstand more people. Seraph was silent for a moment. She knew Val would have such a reaction. Then she continued talking about horses. She explained to him that horses were animals that ate 10 times as much as humans. Val, hearing this, fell silent. There was an awkward silence for a minute. Then Val awkwardly considered it logical. After all, if the horses were carrying people, then they really could eat so much. It wasn't a big problem for him. Sarah agreed with him theoretically. However, if you look at it realistically, the number of horses was equal to the number of people. But the problem was the gravity of things. The man was surprised by what he heard. He realized that it was necessary for those to carry food for the country, and will need more men and horses to carry the food. Usually there was logistics for such cases. Sarah realized with sadness that her countrymen were hunting for all the food on the territory of Val's homeland. The man tried to calm the crying girl, but she was sorry to bother her warriors. After all, they were very skilled knights, so it was scary to lose them. But due to problems with the lack of materials and food, they lost their motivation and fortitude. The girl was trembling from the overwhelming sadness. Others began to worry about her condition. She cried like a child out of sadness. Cecilia thought that they would fly in a calm atmosphere, but everything went very differently. Marcias could understand Serafina's feelings. After learning this, they looked like fools who had only been crossing the forest for 10 days. Although Serafina herself got to that place very quickly. Then, the girls turned their attention to the foreground. Serafina was talking to a warmly smiling Val with embarrassed displeasure. Cecilia, seeing this scene, noticed that they began to look more and more like engaged people. Marcius agreed with that. Serafina was immediately embarrassed. Cecilia, blushing, looked at the girls in a daze. Then she asked them if they really thought so. Cecilia confirmed it. She thought so all the time. Serafina was confused by this knowledge. Next, the girl tried to come to her senses, but soon embarrassing thoughts filled her head. She couldn't deny it. The guy really had a good body. His muscles were great. When Val heard this, he noticed that the girls were very nice. Suddenly, the guy noticed something ahead, which made him tense up. He tensely told everyone to hold on tightly to something. Hearing his words, everyone instantly became tense. Only Marcius looked at everyone blankly. Everyone got ready for something. Val's copy of the dragon also felt something. In the next moment, she dodged the flames flying at them. The fireball missed them, flew into the trees, and immediately exploded. A stunning explosion sounded around the area. Serafina thought they were being attacked by enemies. She wanted to ask Val about it, but the man was busy because of a problem they had. Therefore, he couldn't explain everything to her at once. A dragon was flying high in the sky above them. The flurry of flames didn't stop on them, but they were able to dodge the fire. There were only dragons that breathe fire and live near the mountain deposits of black iron. Such dragons were fiery, true dragons. They were called Grenili. Apart from the flame breath, their distinctive feature was their beak-shaped face. Serafina noticed that he looked like a Molly's berry. The man agreed with this. Their situation was bad. They won't be able to fight the dragon at the moment. If they do that, Cecilia and Marcius will be destroyed. Sarah tried to find a way out of the situation, but the dragon replica was just a flying spirit and was not suitable for fighting. Serafina thought about going downstairs, but Val understood that the two of them would not be able to cope with the dragon. The best option for them was to escape. Normally, fire dragons weren't interested in dragon replicas, but something went wrong this time. Suddenly, Grenili was too close to them. Then, the fire dragon began to prepare to unleash its flames on them. They could only stare at it. Fortunately, the dragon was unable to release its flames. He was distracted by the attacks of an unknown group. They quickly directed a barrage of fire at the monster, preventing it from paying attention to the dragon's replica. The dwarves, dressed in equipment, fired a machine gun directly at the dragon. Heavy cannon fire was trying to hit the dragon. Serafina was surprised that the dragon was distracted by something. The man informed her that the miners had helped them. Fortunately, they appeared at the right moment. Then they went down with the dragon replica. In order not to draw the dragon's attention to himself again, the dragon replica landed right next to the miners who were engaged in a sustained fire dragon attack. Then they came down with a copy. The dragon did not retreat. The numerous attacks did not frighten him. The dwarf, noticing the approach of the company, asked about their condition. Val thanked him for his help. They were fine. The man then informed them that it was the worst time to fight the dragon at the moment. The dwarf realized this and ordered everyone to stand down. Then the order was given to evacuate to the fourth mine. The dwarf grabbed the frozen girl by the arm. She also had to head towards the mine. Sarah didn't understand how they were going to escape. The dwarf informed her that she would see everything soon. Then he unhooked the pin from the grenade, thereby activating it. Next, he notified the girl to close her eyes. The next moment, the grenade flew towards the approaching dragon. Grenale's fire dragon was momentarily blinded by a flash, but instead of being scared, he prepared to release his flame again. Val and the girl felt a stream of fire approaching them. The man ordered the girl to stop. They should have covered from the attack. Then he covered the girl with his body. His equipment protected him from the flames. The stream of flames attacked them for a long time. Val held the girl tightly in his arms, not letting the fire touch her. Soon, the flames' breathing stopped. It became dark in the corridor of the mine. Only the eyes of the gloomy dragon twinkled brightly. Seeing that they were no longer moving, Grenali began to leave. Soon, the fire dragon took off and headed in another direction. There was silence in the corridor of the mine. Steam from the recent flame was floating on the man's cloak. The girl stared back intently. She and the man tried not to move, waiting for the dragon to appear. But he left them. Therefore, Sarah breathed a sigh of relief. They were able to escape from annihilation. Val asked Serafina about her condition, but she wasn't hurt. The girl also asked about his condition. Val told her that he was a little hurt. Soon worried girls were running towards them. Serafina reported that everything was fine with them. Only the girl was a little scared. Cecilia and Marcia's were glad that they were okay. If it wasn't for the miners, they would have been destroyed by now. Then the girl asked if it had always been like this on this mountain. However, the man denied it. He didn't understand what had happened and why the dragon had appeared. The dwarves themselves were surprised by this. As soon as they were informed about this, they immediately rushed to help. But they didn't think so much about what had happened. At the moment, they wanted to be happy that everyone was alive and well. Soon, the dwarf representative pointed them somewhere ahead. A stunning view awaited them ahead. Serafina looked at the internal structure of the mine with surprise. You were amazing. Tall pillars with numerous floors were held up by attaching to the ceiling and a circle-shaped structure. The dwarf informed them that this structure was called a blast furnace at the foot of a towering mountain. Then he cheerfully informed everyone that they should make onsen first, and then they can talk. Serafina continued to admire the structure of the dwarves' residence. She appreciated the homeland of the dwarves with delight. This place was much cooler than the blonde girl had expected. The company and the dwarf's escort headed to the very center of the dwarf village. First, they started crossing the bridge. The girl was surprised that the dwarves were able to so neatly hollow out the foot of the mountain. It was an unimaginable skill and work for her. The dwarf was pleased to hear her praise. After all, exploration and excavation were the passion of the dwarves. It was very dwarven. The girl smiled at the dwarf's joy. Then Serafina introduced herself to the dwarf, and his blindness of the eyes was truly magnificent to her. The dwarf giggled at her compliment. Embarrassment could make his back itch. Sarah felt awkward for a moment, but the dwarf immediately changed the subject. He also introduced himself to the company in response. His name was Kimaki. It was just a coincidence that they had just met. He promised that he would show them, as his guests, everything around. The other dwarves supported Kimaki. It was a little difficult for the girl to distinguish between the dwarf clans. They all looked the same to her. Kimaki wanted to take them to the hot springs first. Serafine, hearing this, became interested in the source. Kimaki wanted her to communicate with him without official honors. Then they went down the stairs. After a while, they continued to descend the stairs. The girl noticed that even so they went down very deep, but the stairs didn't end. Soon, she also noticed that due to the appearance of steam, the landscape was getting thicker and foggier. Additionally, a peculiar smell appeared. Serafina could not identify it. Then Val explained to her that it was the smell of sulfur. The girl had previously thought that it was the smell of raw materials for gunpowder. At least that's what she thought. Suddenly, Kimaki called out to Sarah. He informed her that they were almost there. Then he warned them it was very slippery under their feet. Finally, the stairs ended. The dwarf pointed them to the side, where a boiling river was waiting for them in a mining village. A beautiful view of a waterfall falling from a boiling river appeared in front of them. The girls, seeing this, were delighted with the beauty of this place. Serafina looked at the boiling waterfall with delight. Pleasant steam surrounded them. Marcia's also appreciated the unreal look of this place. The dwarf informed them that the water was hot. Therefore, there was a bathtub with chilled water in the hut. It was like the baths in the West. Val then informed Sarah that he was going to another hut. They had to split up. It was a mining culture. It was strange for Val that the baths had separate changing rooms and entrances for women and men, but the girl was more surprised by the pedantry of his people. Then the man left her. At that moment, Cecilia informed Sarah to leave as soon as possible. Serafina came to her senses and agreed with the words of the black-haired girl. Next, Kimaki began to lead them inside the bathhouse. The girl noticed that her head was touching the ceiling. That's because it was a village for dwarves. Continuing on her way, the blonde-haired girl was surprised to notice that the inside of the bathhouse was also built with metal. Kimaki then explained to her that wood was a valuable commodity because of the time it would take to transport it. After all, the dwarves are underground in the mountains. It was too expensive for them to use wood for such a thing. Instead, they can use a lot of stones and metal. Therefore, they can naturally create such buildings. Serafina was surprised by the peculiarity of their land. Cecilia informed Sarah that she would help her remove the armor. Serafina, on the other hand, was wondering what natural baths were like. While Cecilia was removing the armor from Serafina, she stared intently at the dwarf. He didn't try to move. Therefore, the girls' gazes darkened. Serafina and Marcius looked at the dwarf with gloomy and disapproving glances. They were disappointed in the dwarf in some way. He also did not understand their gazes. Therefore, the dwarf uncomprehendingly asked them if they had any questions for him. Marcius was angry. After all, the dwarf himself had told them about a separate culture for men and women. But Serafina stopped her. The girl awkwardly wanted to talk to him about it. She told the dwarf that even the boy wasn't allowed to peek at them. Kimaki was stunned. She realized that they wanted to drive her away. She needed to sort out the misunderstanding as soon as possible. Therefore, Kimaki began to take off her helmet. She thought that the helmet had changed her voice, which made everyone think she was a boy. Kimaki soon appeared in front of everyone. She had short braids with bangs. Kimaki thought that by removing the mask, they would realize that she was a girl. However, the others just stared at her in shock, which made Kimaki panic. The girls continued to stare at her with wary eyes. Then the girl had to prove that she was female. Kimaki unbuttoned her blouse, thereby showing a sign that she is a woman. The girls looked at her in shock. The next moment, stunned screams rang out in the bathhouse. The girls were surprised that Kimaki was a girl. She informed them that she was a girl. She was 55 years old. If you take into account the dwarves for a long time, she was about the same age as them. She had previously been surprised by people in the West, who believed that Kimaki looked like a Panzanian. In their classical understanding, dwarf girls also had beards. But that was just prejudice. Serafina was stunned. After all, it was very common in humans. Kimaki suggested that they thought the scarf was a beard. Dwarves wore a scarf out of necessity. This meant that the rumors were false. Only the elders saw their real faces. Cecilia knew about it, but she didn't tell them. She hadn't had this much fun in a long time. Then the girl changed the subject to hot springs. Serafina calmed down and accepted the situation. Marcy and Kimaki wanted to rub her back. Soon, everyone took off all their clothes and headed to the hot spring. Serafina, entering there, was delighted. The place with the springs was huge. The bathroom was outside. Warm steam was in the air. Marcius looked at the hot spring with admiration. It was a magnificent sight. There weren't many places to see it. Marcius looked at the water with concern. It seemed to her somehow cloudy. Kimaki then explained that the hot water contained dissolved crystalline sulfur. The girls had never heard of it, so they were amazed. For this reason, the water was good. It is useful for exhaustion from mining and transportation, as well as injury. Water is also useful for sensitivity to cold and moon pains. In addition, it made the skin smooth and even. Serafina was surprised, because for her it's just water. Marcius didn't believe it either. It was hard for her to believe that the healing hot water came naturally and flowed freely. Then Kimaki also informed them that the hot spring had existed for at least 2,000 years. Others wanted to stop thinking about it and just go swimming. To begin with, the girls wiped themselves thoroughly. Then they started bathing. Serafina went down to the pool and enjoyed getting used to the hot water. Cecilia knew that it was not the same as swimming in a river or lake. She hadn't been to this place in a long time. Last time, she spent time with Lizia. Lizia had the right to summon a copy of the dragon, but Cecilia thought she was a bit of a loser. The other warriors were on a different level. Serafina, hearing this, became thoughtful. The girls thought with panic that she wanted to become a rival to Lizia. They wanted to dissuade her. Even if she could subdue a dragon with a pair of fire scissors, she shouldn't have risked it in vain. The lifestyle of a dragon hunter was very determined for Kimaki. The dwarf was enjoying the hot springs. The girls also enjoyed themselves in the hot spring. Even though they knew they were in the depths of the earth, the girls were surprisingly cheerful. The ceiling in the onsen reminded everyone of the starry sky. Kimaki informed them that it was silver ore. She shines like a star when she gets willpower. It is an indispensable lamp for those who are weak against the sun. The amount of mithril in them was too much. Kimaki also informed them that the large stone in front of them was also pure silver ore. It's unrefined, which is why it's so dim. However, the stone glowed brightly when touched by the sulfur. Serafina looked at it with delight. After this was mentioned to her, Serafina was tempted to try to touch him. The girl rose from the water with a quick movement. Cecilia suggested that she use a sword or a collar for this, but she wanted to do it so that it wouldn't happen. Therefore, she quickly went to the stone. The black-haired girl was worried about Serafina. Soon, the blonde-haired girl found herself near Mithril. She had heard that when touched, the stone would give strength to those who touched it. Then Serafina touched the stone. When she touched the stone, she felt an indescribable feeling inside her. She no longer had the desire to fight like the last time, nor the curiosity. They were all gone. There was a feeling in her that made her want to cry, namely, nostalgia. The overwhelming sensations brought tears to her eyes. Suddenly, the girl woke up. She tried to come to her senses. After that indescribable feeling, the girl wanted to cool down a little on the stone. The girl sat down on a rock and silently looked at the starry sky for a long time. She thought the glowing stones on the ceiling were a bit of a strange landscape. The girl was admiring the ceiling. Suddenly, she heard a voice that distracted her from staring at the glowing stones. It was Val. He anxiously informed the girl that it was slippery on the rocks, but the man stopped in mid-sentence. His gaze was lowered to the open bottom of Serafina. This caused his cheeks to instantly turn red. The girl, realizing the whole situation, immediately turned pale. She stared at Val with a dazed look. The man himself said earlier that they should be separated. However, in fact, there were only separate changing rooms in the baths. Val turned away from the girl, embarrassed. Serafina immediately blushed with shame. She remembered that the man had told her about it. However, she didn't realize it herself. Val tried to justify his embarrassment by turning away so as not to embarrass the girl. The next moment, the man bravely turned towards the girl. Serafina noticed with embarrassed tears that he was like a dragon. She noticed with great embarrassment that a certain part of the guy was bigger than before. Val was embarrassed by his words. He was trying to control himself. He should have waited until then. After a while, everyone had already finished bathing in the hot springs. The girls and the guy were fully dressed in their clothes. Serafina felt ashamed and embarrassed because of the recent incident with Val. The girl felt that she had lost something important as a Virgo, so she was a little upset. Marcius, on the other hand, found this incident unsurprising. After all, Sulfur was beautiful down to the smallest detail. Sarah considered herself guilty because of the misunderstanding. Kamaki had heard that she was married, so she thought Sarah wouldn't mind. The girl was embarrassed. However, she understood that she was engaged and was going to marry Val. Suddenly, Sarah noticed a scar on the man's neck. She remembered that Val had previously shielded her from the dragon's flames, which caused him to get burned. Sarah felt guilty, so she praised the guy. After hearing the compliment from Sarah, the guy was embarrassed. He didn't know how a girl could make him feel embarrassed with just one word. Serafina just smiled at him. Then they continued on their way. After bathing in the hot springs, the company went upstairs to the city of dwarves. With the help of silver ore, the bustling city illuminated its surroundings. Sarah was in the process of exploring a new area. The girl noticed with an awkward blush that when they came to the homeland of the dwarves after escaping from the dragon and visiting the onsen, they were greeted on such a large scale. A crowd of dwarves surrounded them, treating them to food. Sarah was shocked by this. She was confused. After all, they were in this place because of her helmet. Therefore, it was a shock to her that they had arranged such a celebration for them. Kimaki told her not to worry. They will charge a different fee for the helmet. Stunned, Serafina asked what she meant. Suddenly, another dwarf called out to Kimaki. The crowd of dwarves announced that they would take Serafina's armor. The girl was surprised by this. She looked at it with shock. Sarah remembered about her armor. She left it at the onsen. Then, in a trembling voice, the girl asked Kimaki if her armor was a payment. But she did not agree with this, which is why Sarah immediately calmed down. Then she asked Kimaki about her armor. The girl wanted to know why they had taken her armor. It turns out that there was a workshop nearby. And as payment, they wanted to disassemble Serafina's armor and reassemble it. But Sarah didn't have to pay them for it, because they had their own reason for it. Just thinking about it, Kimaki's expression changed to one of admiration. She was pleased to say that Serafina had a very large armor. Therefore, it was a sin for them not to touch her. Kimaki has been dreaming about this for a long time. Sarah, hearing this, was shocked. Then Kimaki came to her senses. She said with awkward embarrassment that they, the dwarves, were just very curious. The dwarves want to learn everything down to the smallest detail about rare armor, weapons, experiments, and medicines. Therefore, they were very glad that the girl was in this place, because they rarely see other people. Serafina was pleased by Kimaki's warm words. The city was busy. There was noise everywhere. Soon, the staff of the dwarf tavern approached the company. They brought them food. They were presented with dwarf specialties, boiled crab, mussel, and mochi from mountain sweet potatoes. Serafina was delighted with this. After all, she will taste the dishes of the dwarves. Kimaki explained to them that their boiled crabs were very tasty. Therefore, they should definitely try them. It's not for nothing that they came. And the midi shells from the edge of the gnomes are soaked in a fragrant drink. And their mountain sweet potato mochi was very tender. They can also become an ingredient for sake. Sarah has already tried mochi in her native land, but this was the first time she had ever heard of mountain sweet potatoes being an ingredient for sake. Suddenly, a guy turned to the blonde girl. He asked her with a smile if she had noticed anything. Sarah thought about it. Then she enthusiastically remembered the drink, namely the hot sake of the dwarves. At the same moment, Kimaki brought a bottle of drink with a cheerful smile and poured it into their glasses. Serafina looked at the drink in her glass with admiration. It had a very pleasant shade. The girl also noted his good scent. The dwarves specially selected the taste of the drink during the experiment so that it would suit both crabs and midi. Serafina wanted to taste the drink as soon as possible and feel this moment. After drinking the drink, the girl felt a pleasant burning sensation inside. Although the sake itself was cold, drinking it made everyone feel hot. Then the girl remembered that she needed to taste the crab along with the drink. Next, the girl broke the crab and picked up its meat. It was very juicy in appearance. The pleasant aroma made him want to eat as soon as possible. Therefore, the girl quickly tasted it. After tasting the meat, Serafina appreciated it with pleasure. It was very tasty, which is why the girl wanted more. After a while, they finished with the food and drinks. Serafina ate a little too much because of the delicious food. Therefore, her stomach was a little swollen. Cecilia did not think that the girl had eaten a little too much. She ate a lot. Sarah was embarrassed by her words. Kimaki was glad that they liked everything. When they heard this, they thanked her in return. Now it was their turn to address the main reason for their stay in this place. Namely, they came to the homeland of the dwarves in order to pick up Serafina's helmet. The girl was looking forward to getting her helmet. The company then headed towards the gnome workshop in order to get the long-awaited helmet of Serafina. The helmet was needed to fully equip her. Soon, the dwarves' blast furnace appeared in front of them, with which they create numerous things. Serafina and Marcius were amazed by its massive size. They looked at this place with a kind of panic. After all, it was huge, too far beyond their expectations, which made them a little sad. Next, the blonde-haired girl noticed a metal titan standing next to her. Marcius realized uncomfortably that it wasn't just a statue. Then Serafina silently looked at the guy with a pleading look in her eyes. But he didn't notice it, so the girl had to call out to him. However, when he paid attention to her, Serafina could not utter a word. Val asked her if she was surprised. The girl agreed with this. Although all the dwarves she met were very good, however, it seemed to her that their strength was too great. She had a fear that they might start using their power for something other than good. But the man didn't think so. It seemed to him that the girl was just unreasonably afraid. Then the girl assumed that it was because of the dwarven longevity. Val informed her that dwarves didn't have the temperament to dominate everyone. The girl should have met one of his dwarf acquaintances, and then she would understand everything. Somewhere inside, an elderly dwarf was sitting in the workshop. The white-haired artisan was carefully working on one thing, when suddenly he was called. The white-haired dwarf's name was Barkas. It turns out that the company came to Barkas for the helmet. Serafina was surprised to note that the three dwarfs she knew turned out to be Barkas. She was delighted by this moment. Kimaki informed Barhas that she had returned safely. The white-haired dwarf was glad to see the girl. He opened his arms for a hug. Next, the girl of the dwarf race informed that she had already met with the company. Serafina also greeted old man Barkas. They hadn't seen each other for a long time since she'd given them her crystal helmet. It's been quite a while since that incident. The dwarf was glad that the girl was okay. He informed her that his subordinates were currently working on her armor. She'll be as good as new by the next day. The girl thanked him for the helmet. Barkas gladly accepted her gratitude. Then the girl curiously asked for details about her new helmet. The next second, the white-haired artisan revealed the girl's new helmet to them. He put all his strength into it. It didn't look like the usual type of helmet. This helmet looked like a metal band with animal ears. Therefore, Serafina, along with Val, was stunned by the new helmet. They looked at old man Barkas with puzzled looks. But it really was a helmet. However, they did not believe it. They thought that this thing was not a helmet. Therefore, the dwarf, with displeasure, informed Serafina to try to dress him. Sarah awkwardly agreed to this. Soon, Sarah put on her helmet. He looked very cute on it. Val looked at her pretty appearance with delight. She was puzzled because of her new helmet. It was different from her previous helmet. It was very light and did not cause discomfort. So she assumed with embarrassment that it was just an ornament. Old man Barkas agreed with this. On the one hand, it was true. However, on the other hand, it was a real helmet. The girl realized that she had to activate her new helmet. Then she tried to do it. Helmet activation has begun. At the same moment, a hidden structure began to emerge from the helmet. With lightning-fast movements, the helmet began to change externally. The girl was stunned to feel it. She realized with shock that something had opened on her helmet, but she couldn't touch her face because her helmet was fully open and prevented her from doing so. Old Man Barkus informed her that it was a helmet specially made for her. The dwarf named it the Silver Crystal Twig. It was his best invention. The girl was still amazed by the name of her helmet. Suddenly, he gradually began to close, returning to his original appearance. The helmet was designed so that if it doesn't feel dangerous, it closes. The strength of the helmet also depended on the strength of its wearer. Sulfur will completely control it. The girl, hearing this, was delighted with her new helmet. However, instead of admiration, Marcius was overcome with fear. She began to tremble with terror. The girl understood that this did not bode well for them. If you add up everything she saw, then the picture loomed bleak. She noted with horror that the dwarves had a lot of mithril products, rich, fertile land, miraculous medicines, and even advanced magic techniques. Thus, they will be able to destroy their homeland in a second. That's why Marcius was terrified. Marcius's tears began to flow from fear and despair. She thought it was the end for their homeland. Serafina tried to comfort her. The dwarf was curious to watch what was happening because he found out how other people relate to his race. Then, the white-haired dwarf called them to a place. People haven't seen real power yet. Therefore, he wanted to show his teacher who was sitting in the sanctuary. Namely, the ancient super technology. Old Man Barkus showed them an innovative device with a smile. Not only was it powerful, but it also looked very impressive. There were numerous inappropriate artifacts that had not yet been discovered by him. The girls were amazed by the huge number of devices. Marcius turned pale from shock. Serafina didn't understand what the dwarf was talking about at all. Marcius was on the verge of fainting from terror. Then Old Man Barkus explained to her that a long time ago, their predecessor, after long wanderings, discovered this place and found many treasures there. These were materials unknown to them. They exuded an unknown force. There were also a large number of misplaced artifacts. Their ancestors wanted to explore the unknown. Kimaki hurried her grandfather and said that when she saw these devices, she immediately thought of one thing. Then the girl ran up to one of the artifacts. Then the girl said that the artifacts made a strong impression on her. They were really cool to her. Serafina was struck by this statement. Then Serafina realized that this was the true attitude of the dwarves towards super technology. Kimaki was overjoyed with the technique. Sarah realized that she was too worried about it. Earlier, she had already been told something similar at the elders' meeting. Kimaki agreed with this. The dwarves were more drawn out by getting to know unknown technologies than arguing with strangers. However, if any enemy dares to set foot on their lands. Suddenly, the old man fell silent for a moment, causing the girls to be horrified for a moment. Then, with a cheerful smile, they announced that they would show their enemies what they were capable of. No one will win the story of the dwarves. Sarah vowed that if she returned to the country, she would keep quiet about them as much as possible. Meanwhile, not far from the entrance to the fourth dwarf mine, the fire-breathing dragon Gran Neely was sitting. He was looking towards the mine. His sharp gaze only looked in one direction, even though the dragon had caught its prey, but still, for some reason, did not fly away from this place. On an open-topped mountain deep underground, the company rested and enjoyed the peace. There was silence in the dwarf mine because everyone was resting. In the room, the girls were sleeping peacefully after a busy day. Suddenly, Serafina heard some sounds coming from afar. At that moment, a strange device appeared from the wall, and the girl screamed in fright. Her scream woke everyone up. Serafina stared wide-eyed at the strange device. She didn't understand why it was there. The girl, in amazement, asked her friends what had happened. At that moment, Kimaki, who had already woken up, joined them. She greeted the girls and wished them a good morning. The girl apologized to them for scaring them. It turns out that it was the dwarves who gave the signal for the morning gathering. This happened to them every day. Serafina realized that it was already morning. However, the girl, looking at the fake starry sky, could not fully believe that it was morning. It seemed to her that it was night at the moment. But everyone who came to the dwarf homeland for the first time said so. Soon, everyone woke up and headed towards the gnome restaurant to have breakfast. After breakfast, they reached another goal, which means they will be able to rest soon. Serafina smiled dreamily and said that it would be great to be in the onsen in winter. Suddenly, Kimaki turned to her and asked her to listen to her. Kimaki happily informed Serafina that she would also go to the village with them. Val knew about it too. Sarah was very surprised by this. Puzzled, she asked the girl about the reason for her arrival in their village. Kimaki then informed them that they had to properly escort the guests, but it wasn't hard for her. With a sly smile, she informed Serafina that she would not interfere with her and Vela's adult activities. Her words made Serafina blush because they hadn't gotten to that point yet. But it was only a matter of time. Serafina was confused by the situation. She tried to deny it. Kimaki was unaware of what had really happened to the girl. Then Serafina wanted to explain the whole situation to her. However, she was interrupted. The dwarf shouted to Kimaki. He reported that something unpleasant had happened. Unfortunately, there was some unpleasant news. The dragon that had attacked them earlier had returned. This information came as a surprise to the entire company. Serafina realized that the dragon was targeting them. This has never happened before. This could be a serious problem for them. Since the fire dragon knew how to stand up to the likes of Val, it was clear that he would head in their direction. Hearing this, Serafina made a decision. Marcius realized with horror that her mistress Sarah was going to do what she was thinking about. If they couldn't avoid it, the blonde girl was willing to go for it. The girl with a determined attitude informed everyone that she would fight the dragon alone. She was serious about her decision. Marcius could tell by the look in the girl's eyes that Serafina was full of enthusiasm for the fight. She was sure it was just to test out the new helmet. No one tried to dissuade the girl from her decision. Everyone just started collecting immediately. According to the data sent about 30 minutes ago, the dragon was located near the 4th tunnel. Kimaki was embarrassed and uncomfortable that they had forced the guests to fight, but the girl reassured her. Serafina was already ready. The blonde-haired girl was fully dressed in her armor, and she already had her new helmet activated. She was always ready to defend herself. Soon, the guy and the girl found themselves near the 4th entrance to the mine. When they went outside, they noticed a flying dragon high in the sky. He hovered in one place, waiting for them to appear. When he saw them, he immediately went towards them. At the same moment, the fire dragon Granny descended from the sky to the ground. He menacingly stood right in front of the girl and waved his paw. However, Val was able to defend against this attack. The girl was also not surprised by the dragon's swing. She jumped away from him at high speed, preventing him from attacking her. Then the fire dragon stopped, staring intently in their direction. His sharp gaze stared at the girl and the guy for a long time. Serafina realized that the granny dragon had studied them. She noticed that he was preparing well for battle. The next moment, Kimaki announced that the dwarves were ready. The blonde girl called out to Cecilia and Marcius. They informed her from afar that they had taken refuge in a safe place. Kimaki also informed Serafina that she would be in support. Sarah relied on her. The girl ordered her to tell everyone that no one should come near this place. Granily was preparing to release his flames. A powerful fire began to accumulate in his mouth. Val, seeing this, also began to prepare for defense, in order to attack the dragon. In the next instant, Granny released his flames on them. The guy attacked the fire dragon at the same time as the girl. But their attack failed. The dragon was unharmed, because he had a very tough defense. A young man and a girl attacked the fire dragon together. However, their attack was unsuccessful. The dragon remained unharmed, as it had a very strong defense. Then, after their attack, the dragon stood up on its hind legs, thereby towering over them. The next moment, he swung his paw again to strike with his sharp and hard nails. The girl managed to put out her sword to defend herself from the dragon's blow, but she realized with horror how strong he was. While the dragon was busy with Serafina, the others were also trying to attack him. Numerous gunshots were fired in his direction. The girl also attacked him at the same time as the others. However, he absolutely did not give the opportunity to break through his defense. The other girls, watching the battle from afar, were amazed by its power. They noted with horror that it was difficult for their friends. Cecilia doubted that the Molesbury dragon that attacked earlier was as strong as Granily. She'd heard that it took them several dozen warriors to win last time. No one knew how this battle would end. Then Kimaki decided it was time to use it. The dwarves had specially prepared for such a case. They prepared a chain detonating grenade. Kimaki was very excited and wanted to test her in action. The other girls were shocked by this idea. Marcius was horrified by the situation. She thought that the dwarf wanted to destroy them along with himself, but last time it all ended in vain. Besides, Kimaki asked her not to worry about her missing. Marcius understood that the girl just wanted to test the gun, but in the next moment, Kimaki tore off the chain detonation from the grenade. The others could only be horrified. The girls started screaming in fright. Kimaki realized with a panic that she needed to throw the grenade as soon as possible. Then she told Val and Serafina. The countdown began, and Kimaki prepared to throw the cannon. After the countdown, the girl decisively threw a grenade towards the fire dragon. The gun was aimed directly at Granny. A second later, the grenade exploded right in front of the dragon. A powerful explosion rang out in the area. He was so stunning that the girls jumped in fright. The dust that rose soon settled down, and soon a fiery dragon appeared. The girls looked fearfully in the direction of Granny. They hoped that the attack had had an effect on him. However, the dragon was not affected by the explosion. He began to prepare to release his flames. The girls saw it with horror. They were a little upset about Kimaki's actions. But at that moment, while the dragon was distracted by the girls, Val crept up on him and attacked him. For a moment, Granny lost consciousness due to the unexpected attack. The girls were happy about it. Seeing this, Serafina realized that the right moment had come to defeat the dragon. The blonde-haired girl swung her sword, preparing to strike. Unfortunately, the dragon quickly recovered from the blow. Therefore, the girl only managed to touch him slightly. Serafina thought her punch was too weak, but in the next instant, she realized that he had anticipated her attack and managed to block it. She apologized to Val for missing the opportunity to win. The dragon spread his wings and began to flap them. For a moment, the wind picked up in the area. The fire dragon Granny rose into the sky, looking down at them. Seeing this, the girl thought that the dragon wanted to fly away. However, Val had a different opinion. He stood in front of the girl to protect her. Serafina was looking at the guy in confusion. He asked to become her shield, and she went to attack the dragon. The girl was very worried because the dragon had a powerful flame. She didn't think they could stand up to him, but the guy didn't agree with her. The fire dragon grandly prepared to unleash its flames on them. Val was annoyed by this, but he also prepared to defend himself. Suddenly, something began to spin in the air. Suddenly, a small girl who was a spirit appeared in the air. She announced her arrival with a smile. Everyone looked at her in shock. People were surprised to recognize her as a familiar bookmaker. Buffmaker informed the fire dragon that she would jump out when he called. It had been a long time since she had addressed him. The guy and the girl looked at Mrs. Buffmake in surprise. They were stunned by her sudden appearance. The girls were surprised that a fairy they knew appeared in this place. People remembered how Ms. Buffmake had told them about the challenge, but they hadn't thought about it. Then the fairy girl informed them that she had called the dragon herself in order to talk to the next great patriarch. The dragon also said in a ragged voice that it had been a long time since anyone had wounded him with such a brilliant blow. The guy and the girls were in a dazed state. Their wide-open eyes stared at the dragon in surprise. They realized with deep shock that the dragon that had attacked them earlier could actually speak. They were also worried that he had such a strange voice. Then Fairy Bufake informed them that it was because he was a fire dragon. With the help of their wills, the fire dragons were able to speak with their minds. That was the whole secret. Buffmake informed them that she too, with the help of the power of wind and water, with energy and power, could make them talk. That's why the dragon, the owner of the human will, can also speak. But it wasn't really his voice, but rather a translation of the dragon's will. That's why it didn't sound very good. Val had known Fairy Bufake for a long time, but this was the first time he had heard about it. The fire dragon Granny has already done what he came to this place to do. That's why he wanted to fly back to his home. However, Serafina anxiously stopped him. They wanted to ask the fire dragon about the meaning of the test. He couldn't just come to the girl and convince her to come home. The fire dragon, hearing their questioning speech, only sighed wearily. Then, descending to the ground, he agreed to explain everything to them. Ildren and Yorai of Radiant Thunder passed the test and therefore deserved to talk to the dragon. Granny was going to explain everything briefly because the wounds received in this battle hurt him. Sarah regretted it. But the dragon didn't understand why she was sorry. After all, he decided to test her strength, and she showed it. These wounds were the result of their ordeal. He explained to them that if he wanted to destroy the girl, he would have been breathing fire down on them from the very beginning without stopping. However, he decided to test her and paid with a claw. Sarah was surprised that the dragon could justify his actions. Granny shook his head and wanted to get down to the original purpose of their meeting. He began to explain the test values that they had passed. Ildren returned to the dragon territory after hiding for so long. This dragon's path consists of testing his strength with his will and, therefore, with his fangs. The blonde-haired girl did not understand why her homeland, Ildren, had returned to the east. Then the dragon suggested that the name of his people had become shameful. If that was true, then that was all the dragon could say. He could only remember it by seeing it with his own eyes, hearing it with his own ears, and feeling it with his own skin. Then the dragon notified about the end of the story. He wanted to return to his home. However, Val still had one last question. Granily, having fallen silent, waited for the question of the follower of the Radiant Thunderer. Val said they didn't know that real dragons could communicate so wisely. He also said that he once hunted Malsbury and took his life. After talking to Granily, it seemed to him that he had made a big mistake, so he wanted to hear his opinion. However, the fire dragon didn't know what a Malsbury was. Then Fairy Bufake explained to him that Molus was a black and green dragon. It turns out that the fire dragon knew him. He realized that they had lost one of their most powerful. The dragon that Val hunted must have lived a very long time. Sliding through the trees and tearing his enemies apart with terrifying force, he was as strong as all the other dragons. There was only one reason why such a mighty dragon could be defeated by them, weak humans. Then Granny informed them of this. In the next second, he informed them that they were able to defeat that dragon because it had dementia. The guy and the girl were stunned when they heard this. Fairy Bluefake wasn't surprised by this. Serafina was amazed that dragons could develop dementia, which sometimes affects the elderly. Dragon Granny was sure that this was the reason. The fire dragon Granny did not understand the reason for their surprise. Even dragons could grow old and develop various diseases. Life inevitably ends, as does rain and sunset. A dragon who stubbornly stands his ground eventually becomes an old man, resigned to the inevitable. The old dragon, defeated by destruction, becomes food for another life. Then the dragon asked them what answer could be given to the mind. But Val just looked at him questioningly. Even if they treat them in a special way, because they communicate through words, dragons, humans, animals, and trees are all equally alive in front of the mind. If the drop of water that makes up this stream is life, then life is intelligence until it stagnates. Life can coexist with reason. Although Val and Serafina hadn't been defeated in the trial, they didn't have to worry about Granel or the black and green dragon. Sarah realized that, although they were smart, they were too greedy in their values. The fire dragon explained to them everything they wanted. He wanted to go home as soon as possible because his arm hurt too much from their recent battle. Then he informed them that he was going to bed. He also said that when his wounds were healed and Val was ready, he could visit his lair. The guy and the girl were stunned. It was a bit problematic for them. But in the next second, the dragon informed them with a low laugh that he was just joking. Then he began to soar into the sky again. Dust rose all around. Next, the fire dragon Granili said goodbye to Ildren and Yorai from Radiant Thunder. The next time they saw each other, the dragon wanted to see one of their cubs. Then, with a loud sound, he disappeared into the sky. Fairy Bluefake also left them at the same time, disappearing into thin air. Serafina and Val just stood there, stunned. They were shocked by all the information. The girl awkwardly noted that she did not know that real dragons were so talkative. Val didn't even know Granny could talk. The girl also remembered with embarrassment and awkwardness the last words of the dragon about the cubs. Val couldn't say anything to that, so he was silent for a moment. Then he remembered Granny's words that all living things have a mind. Then Val told Serafina that he considers the birth of a child as a part of his life. The girl was confused, realizing what he meant. The blonde girl, with fierce embarrassment, loudly informed him that he had not yet done anything to ensure that they had a child. Val, hearing this, was confused. He apologized to the girl for not having done it yet. But she wasn't happy about his apologies. Suddenly, their awkward conversation was interrupted by the girls shouting. Marciasi and Cecilia ran up to them. Marcius, with tears in her eyes, ran up to her mistress Serafina and hugged her tightly. She wanted to know if she was safe and unharmed after the battle with the dragon. Serafina and Val made them worry. Cecilia ran towards her master Val. The girl was also very worried about them. Tears of worry appeared in her eyes. However, Val believed that the fire dragon, who possessed common sense, had saved them. But the girls did not calm down, because Serafina and Val could have been seriously injured because of the whim of the dragon. Suddenly, others intervened in their conversation. They were delighted to see that they were talking to Granulin himself. A huge crowd of dwarves ran up to them, who were very excited. They admired the fact that Serafina and Val were talking to the dragon himself. Everyone wanted to shake their hands and learn about the new line. Serafina was amazed by this. The trip turned out to be eventful, but Serafina was glad that everything ended well and ended without losses. After a while, Old Man Barkus checked Kamaki's readiness for a trip to a foreign village. The girl took with her a lot of tools for handicrafts. Barkas also reminded her about the rules of working with silver and tools. The gray-haired Barkas informed the girl that their life expectancy was very long. He, who had lived for a little over 200 years, did not even imagine that a fire dragon could talk. Voice of Thunder and Crystal Helmet are the nicknames of Serafina and Val. If Kamaki joins them, something exciting will happen. He also reminded the girl of her mining pride. She must always maintain her curiosity and desire to explore, which speak from the depths of her soul. May the flame of her soul never fade. Then Old Man Barkus noticed that everyone had already finished preparations for the trip, and now only Kamaki was waiting, so he sent the girl to them. The girl, saying goodbye to her grandfather, smiled at him. She promised him that next time they would have a great time and talk about souvenirs. Kimaki then gave her kin a farewell sign. Seeing this, Serafina realized that she had already said goodbye to the dwarfs. It turned out that Kimaki would return to the dwarf village from time to replenish supplies. Val noticed that everyone was ready to leave. He then activated his skill so that they could all leave this place together. The next moment, a dragon replica appeared in front of them. The company climbed on it and got ready to fly. Soon, the dragon replica soared into the sky. A replica of the dragon flew high above the ground, spreading huge, leathery wings, catching streams of cold air. Kimaki was thrilled with the flight because it was her first experience flying on a dragon replica. The rest of the participants are already used to this type of transport. The short trip to the dwarf village took 2 days and 1 night, but it was filled with amazing discoveries, new friends, and secrets. Meaningful words from Granulin saddened that he had heard Ildren as the name of the country. The girl had to find out about the secret that was there. At the same time, something was happening in the city of La de Ildren, which was the capital of the Ildren kingdom. There was a chalk fortress in the center of the royal capital. The fortress was built of stone slabs, and its appearance was heavy and gloomy. There were knights standing in the palace near the entrance to the throne room. There was a man in the hall besides them, worshipping the king. The man reported that the 17th Eastern Expedition had met near the village. The first knight, Serafina, commander-in-chief of the First Order, declared her defeat at the end of the expedition. Due to the dedication of the first knight, the 2 volunteer knights only suffered minor injuries. Because of this, they did not need to use labor to cultivate the lands they received as a result of a long expedition. The king thought that Sidiusa, the head of the Lavin border clan, was honored to give him an account of the expedition's work. The name of the king of the Ildren kingdom was Visilberio de Ildren. King Visilberio de Ildren believed that it would be an honor for Sidius, the head of the Lavin frontier family, to report to him on the results of the Eastern expedition. King Visilberio then signaled the guards to leave the throne room for a while so that he could have a private conversation with Count Levend. When the knights had left, the king turned to Sidius. Count Sidius responded to the king's summons. But when he looked up at the king, he was stunned for a moment. The king's face became gloomy and frightening. King Visilberio asked the count why they had refused to travel east, even though they had the strength then. Then Sidius explained to the king that he was afraid to start an expedition. After all, the 17th expedition took place just 13 years after the previous one. People's peace is under threat when such large-scale events are held so often. The king replied in a gloomy voice that he should not have believed the pretense that all this was being done for the sake of the people. He had one order that he had to convey to the great leader of the East. Then King Visilberio, with a nasty smile and gloomy eyes, announced that the barbarians must be destroyed. After all, they had taken away his beloved sister. It was the Sidiosa clan's duty. That was why the man had promoted Sidius's sister to the position of first knight, even though she was only a woman. The king believed that those should be ashamed of all their actions. Summer is coming soon, so he had to give people a break. The emperor ordered Sidius to reorganize the army and begin the 18th Eastern Expedition by the following spring. The man was unhappy with this decision. Sidius wondered if his king was dreaming of the return of his sister, who had probably been destroyed. The king was ready to crush the knights and the people for a glimmer of hope. King Visilberio's campaign against the Sidious family is now presented only as a personal grief. Maybe it was just a way to take my mind off my sister. Then Sidius was silent for a moment, lost in thought. It's not the way he'd like it to be. However, he can only perform his duties. Then the man continued on his way. As the head of Lavinda, they have been loyal subjects of the king since the founding of their house. Therefore, the man will become the king's sword. Sidious promised himself that the expedition to the east would end with him. He will destroy all the barbarians. The man was decisive in his choice. Loyalty was an honor for a knight. Somewhere far to the east, in a village of so-called barbarians, Kimaki was engaged in a trade. The girl was completely focused on her work. It turns out that Kimaki was repairing the holes at the bottom of the pot. She repaired damaged metal vessels with molten alloy. It took her longer than she thought. It's been a week since the girl arrived at the village by the lake. In just a few days after the workshop opened, she received a lot of requests. Residents came to her with their belongings. The girl could live without worrying about food, fuel, and materials. But it didn't cost her the effort. After all she was doing was patching things up, even though it required skill to fill the holes neatly. Kimaki would like to try her hand at forging swords and armor. While the girl continued to work on packing things, a man in a raincoat suddenly came to her. He wanted to know if she was a dwarf blacksmith. When the girl heard this, she realized that he was talking about her. The guy was surprised that the dwarf turned out to be such a nice lady. In fact, he would like the girl to forge him a steel sword. The guy understood that he didn't have enough money for this. However, he promised to give her animal skins and other materials as well. As collateral, the guy gave her a bag of something. Kimaki did not refuse his request. She took the bag. Soon, the guy in the raincoat left the girl's workshop. She stared after him in surprise. Then she looked into the bag he had given her as collateral. Kimaki had never seen this before. She wondered if this unknown instrument was familiar to Serafina. Meanwhile, a group of 3 girls and a guy were walking near the forest. It's only been a week since Serafina visited the dwarf village. She's been living in the east for over a month now. A lot of things happened to her in that short time. She got acquainted with the rich culture, with the common people of the east, who were considered rude barbarians. Serafina also met fabulous clans of elves, dwarves, and dryads, saw forest ecosystems with dangerous and diverse dragons. Serafina also learned about the connection between man and nature, in which the goblins live, about the ritual of cleansing the will of the earth, about the survival of her sister and the existence of her legitimate son. In addition, she heard Ildren's name spoken by the fire dragon. All this was strange to her, and far from the generally accepted knowledge of the West. If they communicate in this way, they will be able to avoid a conflicted future. Not so long ago, Sarah would have thought that this was her true desire, but now she can say with certainty that it wasn't just that. The girl looked at the guy with a warm smile. Val, feeling her eyes on him, turned to her. The guy wanted to ask the blonde girl what had happened, but she only confusedly informed him that she was happy with him. She also said that she seemed to like him. The guy was silent for a moment, his face flushed. He told her, in an embarrassed voice, not to tell him with such a pretty face. Val realized that the girl liked to embarrass him. The tips of his ears were also covered with blush. Serafina started talking. She thought about it a lot and came to a decision. What she would like to do. The girl thought about it. She wanted to tell her country that trade was much more profitable than an eastern expedition, to put an end to the prejudices that led her to this expedition. When Sarah is officially knighted, then she will marry Val. Even though the guy was stunned by it, but he was glad that the girl had agreed to marry him. It was a happy ending for him. Then the whole company continued on their way. Soon they found themselves in a village by the lake. The girl asked Val about the location of Kimaki's workshop. Then the guy showed her the house. It used to be used for meetings, but this house was perfect according to Kimaki's criteria. Although it was quite large for one person, it was just right for a blacksmith shop. Next, the girl approached the entrance of the forge. She immediately informed Kimaki from the doorway that she needed her to repair the metalwork and make nails. Kimaki, hearing Sarah's voice, ran towards her screaming. Approaching Serafina, Kimaki grabbed her in a tight hug. The girl was glad to see Sarah because she came just in time. Serafina was stunned by the loud greeting. She wanted to know the reason for this. Then Kimaki began her story. She said that in the morning she received the first request for the manufacture of a steel sword, but she couldn't get to work because of her great curiosity about the unknown instrument. It was made of pure gold. The girl showed it to Serafina. The girl showed them the object given to her as collateral. When Sarah saw it, she realized that it was golden spurs. Serafina explained that spurs were a tool used in the West for saddling horses. It was attached to the heel of the boot. They poked a trained horse in the side for acceleration. But the golden spur was not a simple tool. The blonde girl realized with shock that they had a special spur. The golden spur was a symbol of chivalry. In Ildren, they are awarded at knighthood. If Kimaki's story was true, then the knight of Serafina's country was alive. Marcius realized it too. Sarah wanted to know about the identity of the surviving knight and Val. The guy thought about it. But then he remembered the conversation with the surviving Ildren knight. Val asked the knight if he wanted to return to the west or stay in this village. He couldn't tell how long it took for him to make a decision. Val soon reported that the knight had decided to stay in this place. After the conversation, they said goodbye and left the Kimaki. The company continued on its way. The guy informed Serafina that they could talk about the topic on the way. Then Val started remembering that day. 3 weeks ago when Sarah tried to destroy the demon before it could take shape. After she collided with Marcius's heads, she lost consciousness. Among the warriors of the West, who were believed to have been eliminated in the fight against earthly dragons and demons, one survivor was found. Fortunately for Val, he wasn't badly hurt, although listing his injuries, it seemed the opposite. The guy with the beard wanted to continue his story, but suddenly, Serafina stopped him. Val just looked at her questioningly. Then the girl informed him that Kamaki had previously told them that the seriously injured man was walking fine, even though it had only been 2 weeks of recovery. Val was just about to tell her about it. It turns out that they also hunted the wounded Molly's berry, an old, real dragon, that day. The guy forced the surviving knight to drink a dragon particle. Sarah was amazed. After all, she thought that the effect of the dragon particle was just a myth. Val's mom told him that in the West, they believe that if you bathe in a dragon particle, your skin will turn into steel, and if someone drinks it, they will become immortal. For them, this piece is the only real dragon they hunt every 10 years. They know it's an elixir, but they've never used it on a seriously injured person. Val brought it to the village just in case and gave it to that knight. It turns out that the dragon particle really works, as it was said in the myths. This not only saved the knight's life, but also helped him recover in a week. The girls were shocked when they heard this. In theory, it was similar to the dragon armor worn by you warriors. Sarah got the impression that it was a very good armor with a strong will, but it wasn't just the excellent durability of the material. The dragon armor wasn't just an item, it was the embodiment of the dragon's willpower. Whoever wore it received various benefits, increased physical strength, rapid regeneration, and more. In addition, the dragon particle could have a strong influence on others. Val wouldn't be surprised if the effect was so strong that the body of a person who ate a dragon would do everything to get it out. The man also thought it was a bad idea to share this knowledge with the West. It is impossible to silence a man who has been lucky. Therefore, Val offered the knight a choice, either stay in the village or go alone to the west across the sea teeming with monsters. If this person was determined to return, they would have to provide him with food, weapons, and assistance in returning. Val believed that if a person gave up his golden spurs, which confirm his identity, then he had already made a decision. Sarah felt warm at his approach. While the group of 4 was heading somewhere, Serafina wanted to ask the guy about the identity of that surviving knight. After all, he had nothing to hide. Then Val noticed the man who was standing in front of them. This was the surviving knight. He was just about to go get some water. Then the knight went to the water source. When he saw Serafina, the first knight among the people, he froze in surprise for a moment. Sarah, noticing him, immediately realized that it was Radiel, her acquaintance. After waking up from the shock, the man immediately dropped to one knee in front of the blonde girl with a quick, elegant movement. Then, bowing his head, he introduced himself to them. He was a member of the army of the Eastern Expedition under the command of Serafina, the 3rd son of Baron Garuda de Radiel. His name was Travas de Radiel. As a knight who has the honor to be next to the first among the knights, Serafina. As a knight who is wholeheartedly devoted to the princess and will always be faithful to her. The man was deeply thrilled that the princess was alive and in good health. He begged Serafina to let his sword serve her again. The blonde girl agreed with a warm smile and ordered Radiel to raise his head. However, at the same moment, a wary Val intervened in their conversation. He wanted to say something to Sir Radiel before he spoke to Serafina. Serafina was surprised by this. Val continued the conversation. He had heard Travis tell Sarah earlier that she was dedicating her heart to Serafina. The guy then informed Travis that Sarah was now his fiancée. That's why Val wanted to find out from Radiel if he had feelings for Serafina. The guy didn't understand why he risked his life for the sake of the girl he was in love with. Serafina was amazed by his words about falling in love. Travis, hearing the guy's words, was surprised. Val thought loyalty meant falling in love. However, for Treves, loyalty was not equal to falling in love. Then Trevis informed him that they, as knights, swear allegiance to their lord, whether he's a king, a lord, or a princess. Devotion is different from adoration. Val, hearing this, was thoughtful. Then he awkwardly informed Serafina that it was difficult for him to understand this concept. After all, when he was a child, he was told about it in a different way. The girl realized this. Serafina remembered that there were no ranks in the East. Therefore, it was difficult for Val to understand about the knight's loyalty to his lord. He didn't even understand what was meant by side service. Then Val finally realized that he had made a mistake in his judgments. He apologized to Travis for being rude. However, he did not consider him guilty because he did not know about their engagement. Travis felt it was impolite to doubt Princess Serafina when he saw her so carefree. The man was surprised that Serafina was able to fall in love. The girl was immediately embarrassed by his words and Vala's gaze. Travis had no idea how it had happened, but as a knight in the service of the princess, he was really happy. Meanwhile, not far from them, Cecilia was annoyed about something. Cecilia was angry about Marcius. She tried to hide behind her back with tears in her eyes. The girl with glasses was sure that Knight Travis hated her. The girl continued to hide from the man, even though he noticed her. Cecilia was getting more and more annoyed by Marcius's silly fear. Marcius wanted the girl to feel sorry for her, because her memory was almost completely gone. However, Cecilia continued to be annoyed by her. Soon, the girl couldn't stand the worried Marcius. The black-haired girl wanted her not to hide and just said it to Travis, so she prepared to give Marcius a push. Then, with a strong push, she sent Marcius forward, straight into the guy's direction. The girl could only scream from Cecilia's push. Travis stared at the scene in amazement. Marcius fell stubbornly into the man's arms. Travis managed to catch her. However, the girl was still distracted by the pain of Cecilia's punch. Suddenly, the girl, hearing Travis's voice, realized her position. She apologized to the man with tears in her eyes, but Sir Radiel was a little embarrassed by their close contact. Then Marcius thought that he did not even want to be with her because of unpleasant feelings. She was overwhelmed by it. Travis denied it. It was true that they had only moved because of her orders, but still, it was a worthy battle that their knights wanted to fight. Travis is proud to be a knight of Ildren, and will not shift the blame for his mistakes to a woman. Marcius was amazed. She hugged Travis tightly. The girl hugged Travis tightly and looked at him with tears in her eyes. She was amazed by his noble speech. Travis was embarrassed by their close contact. He felt the girl's soft touch all over his body. Val, after seeing this scene, finally realized that loyalty and love were really different things after all. It turns out that in Ildren, female knights are not the object of romance. Marcius and Travis continued to hug. Knight Radiel was asked again about his decision. 10 days ago, he miraculously escaped from liquidation. However, everyone was surprised that he had made a decision in such a short time. Serafina was fine. She also had things she wanted to do. That's why she stayed in the East. But the girl wanted to know if Travis had any regrets. The man was actually bothered by one thought. Namely, that regardless of the actual situation, the Eastern expeditions would not be able to escape the shame of losing the princess. And their 8 knights will be ridiculed for making the same mistake as the Knight of Shame. Nevertheless, Travis was lucky to survive. The rest of his comrades, unfortunately, were eliminated in that battle. Upon hearing this, Serafina told him that their bodies had already disappeared. Therefore, she hoped that she would make a decent vacation spot for them. Travis, hearing this, was horrified that everything was so bad. It turns out that when the demons came to Earth, everything around them, except for the animals, turned to dust. Marcius was horrified by this information, and Cecilia noticed it. The black-haired girl whispered to her master Val. He turned to her and opened his eyes in shock. Others also noticed the strangeness in them. Marcius felt sick after their conversation about the bodies of the eliminated knights. The girl looked like she was throwing up. The girl with glasses was trembling all over from the bad feelings that overwhelmed her. She realized that even though Sir Radiel had forgiven her, the other knights had been destroyed because of her. The group tried to calm her down. However, the girl couldn't recover from the information. She appreciated their kindness, but when she thought about the true nature of priests and pastors, the girl felt even worse. She couldn't help but feel sick. Everyone looked at the crying girl in shock. She continued to feel unwell. After a while, the girl with glasses felt better. Marcius washed her face after a recent incident. She was ashamed that they had seen her like this. Serafina was glad that Marcius had calmed down. However, the blonde girl became worried when she saw that Marcius was upset for no reason. She lived for quite a long time in a village in the east. She even had permission from Raidil, and she could help the villagers after the demons returned. Marcius, hearing the concern in Serafina's words, drooped. The girl with glasses knew that everyone was kind, but she had her reasons. The girl began to explain in a trembling voice that, compared to them, she had nothing to contribute as a priest of the Order of Public History. She felt very unhappy. Marcia started crying. She lost her childhood memories due to the incident with the demons. Therefore, she is somewhat devastated by this. She couldn't do anything, so she was worried. Marcias didn't know if she had a purpose in life. Serafina looked at Marcias worriedly. You've been thinking about this too much. Then, after a minute of silence, the girl confessed to her that she had similar thoughts when she first arrived at this place. Serafina explained that she had a lot of authority when she told herself that she could change it on her own. She realized that then she just wanted to give up on life, but that wasn't the case at the moment. If Marcius is alive, she will be able to find the meaning of life. Serafina reminded the girl that it was a gift to survive. The girl with glasses, trembling all over, agreed with Sarah's words. Then Marcia started crying. From the tears that appeared, the girl had to take off her glasses that were in her way. She was sure that everything that happened to her was just fate. The girl with glasses made the decision to definitely find her meaning in life. The whole campaign stood on the shore of a huge lake. After a while, they returned to the village. Val started talking to Travis again on the way. The guy couldn't help but be surprised that even with all his devotion to Sarah, Travis decided not to return to his homeland. He thought he was a brave man. However, Travis didn't consider himself that brave. Val thought that he would be more worried when making a decision. Then Travis realized with a smile that Val wouldn't really be able to figure it out. He was a knight of the Eastern Expedition. Val didn't understand what it meant to be a knight. It was difficult for the guy to understand the meaning of the words of Western people. Then Serafina mentioned that there are no ranks in the East. And in the West, including Ildren, it was the opposite. It was a land where status, determined by work and lineage, prevailed over everyone. Everything was taken into account there. The length of the family tree, the wealth of the lands, the birth of the firstborn or second child, the heir to the throne, or the person who might get nothing. The knights of the East were usually the third or youngest sons who had no chance of succeeding the head of their house. Also, becoming a knight was the only way to avoid unwanted marriages. Val, hearing Serafina's words, was surprised to realize the position of the knights of the East. She knew it didn't sound very pleasant. However, they could receive a village as a reward and establish their own house as a feudal lord. Gaining a certain status is something that every knight in the East aspires to. It was kind of a promotion. In other words, the struggle for a place in society, as well as obtaining fertile soils, valuable medicinal herbs, and lumber. All this was appreciated in the West. Then Travis lost his dream, and all he had was a sword and a sense of loyalty. Considering that he almost lost his life back then, he had a chance to find his place in this village. Therefore, he chose to think of it that way. Val was taken aback by his words. However, he still considered him a brave man. Travis considered himself younger than Val. Therefore, it was a little awkward for him to receive praise from such a worthy person like Val. The guy was surprised by Travis's words. The knight informed him that he was only 28 years old this year. He thought he lacked Val's dignity. Sarah and Val were shocked. Then the girl awkwardly explained to Travis that Val was actually 18 years old. The knight was deeply shocked by this knowledge. Then the guy decided that he saw everything better than he would start explaining everything. Then, using the sharp end of the gun, he began to shave off his beard. Everyone looked at it expectantly. After a while, Val came back to them, but without the beard. Travis, seeing the guy's face without a beard, noticed that he began to look very young, exactly for his age. Then the man thought that he was the oldest person Val had ever met. However, this was not the case. The guy told him about the Kimaki blacksmith. That girl was much older than him. Travis was surprised that he could meet a dwarf. Serafina noticed that living in this place, a man would not get bored. Then Travis noticed that the band had come such a long way, so he wanted to know where they were all going. Val decided that it would be a good decision for Travis to meet with a mentor in life. Soon they found themselves near Niley's house. A pregnant girl greeted them. The black-haired girl also noticed Travis's presence. She was glad that he had recovered from the battle. The man was surprised. I didn't know her. Nail realized that Serafina had not told the man anything. It turns out that she wanted to surprise Travis. Nail realized that they had met Marcius at a party when she was possessed by a demon. Nail then informed Travis that she had previously been in the Eastern Expeditionary Force, and she introduced herself to him, and next to her were her husband Bid and son Eric. The man was deeply shocked. He realized that there was a female knight in front of him, nicknamed Crazy Dog, with a machete. The girl was a little annoyed that he called her by that nickname. Nail was angry and did not want this nickname to be mentioned anymore. Travis apologized to her. Suddenly, her husband approached the girl. He remembered the old days. The man adored the fire that burned in Nail's eyes then, and her current defenseless tenderness. The girl was confused. Then they fell in love in front of everyone. The band was confused by this scene. Soon, Nail and Bid let the guests into their house in order to have tea together. After drinking tea, Serafina told me that they had a conversation with the dragon. Nail was surprised by this. Travis was also stunned that the princess was fighting a dragon. This is the first time he hears about it. The man was a little displeased. Sarah just forgot to tell him a little bit. The knight remembered the awarding of sulfur and how they glorified the princess knight who dispersed the bandit groups. The man thought that she would settle down after the engagement, but at that moment Nail asked him about his future. The girl suggested that he settle down and stay in this village. Travis was surprised. Nail suggested that he find a girl, for example, the widow of Yufu, but Travis refused her offer. After all, he had a girlfriend who cares and supports him. It was Marcius. The black-haired girl remembered how they dreamed of owning their own piece of land. They only fought for this. Many people were destroyed and many were lost. And in the end, they lost. She also remembered that morning when Bid had stormed up and threatened her. That night, she stole food with a sword and set off west in desperation. But along the way, she met a monster, no matter how badly Bid treated her. Each time, the man she hated at the time convinced her to live with him because he loved Nail too much. In the end, she lost all her rage. During all this time, the girl realized one thing. The girl knew nothing but battle. A lot has happened to her, but Nail has found peace on this earth. She was sure that, like Serafina and Val, Marcius and Travis would find a peaceful life in this place. Marcius was amazed by Nail's words about a quiet life. If her destiny is to belong to something, then the girl will continue to look for her vocation with which she can live. It was deep into the night outside, and 2 moons appeared in the sky. Soon, Nail's guests fully tasted her dishes. Sarah praised Nail for the food. Then she and Marcius offered to help clean the table because Marcius was pregnant. But Nail refused. She couldn't let the guests strain themselves. Then Bid said that he would clean up himself. Nail could chat with her friends, but the girl refused anyway. Her husband was already doing everything for her. She needed to move at least a little. Then the girl sat down to rest. At the same moment, she felt weak. Nail, sensing something, opened her eye wide. It turns out that the girl's water broke prematurely. Everyone immediately tensed up. The girl sat down on the floor in pain. At the same moment, her worried husband ran up to her. Nail tearfully announced that she was giving birth. A cold sweat broke out on her face. Upon hearing this, everyone immediately turned pale from the fright of the situation.